Chapter 962. Politeness was mutual. Eulily was in a good mood when she heard such a tone. In the afternoon, when Eulily got off work, Enchanting rode her bike and told Eulily that she was going to buy groceries and went back. Eulily was not in a hurry to go back. Instead, she went to the hospital. After asking about the old lady situation, Eulily went to a ward. It turned out to be a VIP ward. Eulily was a little shocked when she saw this. It seemed that this family was rich. In the morning, she was worried that it might be a scam. She really thought too much. She knocked on the door and walked in. At a glance, she saw Unwavering standing inside. Eulily was stunned. At the same time, Unwavering was also shocked and blurted out, "It's you?" In the ward, in addition to Unwavering, there was also an old lady lying in bed. Next to her sat a middle-aged man who looked a little fat. He had a round face and a smile on his face. He wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, and his skin was a little white. At first glance, it was a classic face of a rich man, but his facial features were very regular. It was not difficult to imagine that he must have been handsome in the past. When the middle-aged man heard Unwavering's voice, he looked up at Eulily and asked, "Manting, do you know this girl?" Unwavering put her hands in her pockets and said with some dissatisfaction, "How can I not know her? Isn't she Oming's mistress?" Mistress. These two words were filled with ridicule, contempt, disdain, and hostility. Eulily's face suddenly changed and became extremely ugly. When the middle-aged man heard that, his face also changed, and he turned to look at Unwavering. Unwavering suddenly realized that she had said something wrong and shouted, "Dad, Oming has a mistress outside? Do you want to marry this kind of man?" The middle-aged man's face became ugly, and he looked at Eulily with a different look. Unwavering stuttered and said, "Enough." The old lady suddenly spoke with indescribable majesty in her voice, with a slightly low voice of warning. "No matter who he is, it is true that he saved me." While speaking, the old lady looked at Eulily, and her eyes were undoubtedly much softer. She waved at her and said, "Little girl, come to me." Eulily didn't look too good, and her smile was a little forced. The middle-aged man, who had been polite just a moment ago, now looked at her with contempt, just like everyone else, because she had called him a mistress. Eulily's heart was indescribably sad. Seeing the old lady waving, she not only did not go over, but also took a step back and said, "Seeing that the old lady is fine, I am relieved. I will go back first. Goodbye." "Come here, girl," the old lady shouted, but Eulily's footsteps became faster and faster. Soon, she was out of the ward and out of the corridor. The old lady was a little annoyed. She patted her son and shouted, "Go and bring that girl back." "Do you want me to die of anger?" The old lady's son quickly stood up and walked out. Seeing Eulily's back, he chased after her and stopped in front of her. Chapter 963. You are too polite. I'm a junior. You don't have to say that to me. Eulily smiled reluctantly. "I still have something to do. I have to go." "Miss, I'm sorry. The middle-aged man blocked her way and said with a troubled expression, "My mother seems to like you very much. If you leave now, I'm afraid my mother will break my legs. It's too dangerous." Eulily saw his embarrassed look and smiled. When the middle-aged man saw her smile, he took the opportunity to act cute and said, "Do you have the heart to watch me die?" Eulily looked at him and inexplicably felt that this uncle was very cute, but she still bowed her head and said, "Uncle, I also want to help you, but my identity is not suitable to appear in front of your family. Sorry, I have to go." "What identity?" "Your current identity is my mother's savior. That's a different thing, right?" The middle-aged man reached out to her and said, "My name is Unwavering. What's your name?" "Eulily." Eulily reached out and gently shook his hand, but soon let go. "Well, now we know each other. Let's go in." The middle-aged man looked embarrassed and begged, pointing to the road ahead. Eulily looked at Unwavering and turned back into the ward. As soon as she entered, she saw the old lady looking at Eulily. The old lady's eyes stared at Eulily's face for a long time. Eulily was a little scared. She subconsciously touched her face and looked at Unwavering behind her. Unwavering was also a little embarrassed. He said, "Don't be offended. My mother is more, well, she is a fortune teller. She likes to look at other people's faces and hands. It's physiognomy and palmistry. You can ask my mother to look at it. She is very accurate. Eulalie had always been an atheist, but she still believed in fortune-telling and physiognomy. She didn't know if it was superstition, but she had an indescribable belief in these things. The old lady stared at Eulalie for a long time and said, "Girl, what is your name?" "Eulalie." "Her name is Eulalie. I told you, Grandma." Shenmanting sat under the stool next to the old lady and looked at Eulalie unhappily. Eulalie nodded, feeling a little strange. She was sitting face to face with her love rival in the ward of her love rival's grandmother. It was a very magical experience, even though she had broken up with Ming. Old Mrs. Shen nodded and smiled. She reached out to Eulalie and said, "The name is very nice, but your life is already light. With this name, it will be even lighter. You should change your name. How about Shen Inwe?" "Huh?" Eulalie was a little confused. "Change my name?" Changing her name the first time they met? That wasn't too good, was it? Eulalie felt a little strange and looked at Shen Longyue. Unexpectedly, Shen Longyue said helplessly and awkwardly, "My mother is like this. Don't mind her. Just listen to her." Chapter 964. Hearing that, Eulalie was stunned. Before the age of 25, I will have bad luck with my parents, husband, and son? Indeed, she had no parents. As for her husband, it seemed that he didn't kill Ming, but he lost his child. Old Mrs. Shun looked at Eulalie with a serious face and said, "Before the age of 25, you will be very unlucky, especially after the age of 20. You will face a life and death catastrophe. If you survive, your future will be unimaginable. If I'm not wrong, you should be 24 years old now, right?" Eulalie was stunned, nodded, and said, "Yes, that's right. Show me your palm." Eulalie stretched out her left hand. Male left, female right. Then, Eulalie stretched out her right hand. The old lady looked at Eulalie's palm and said, "You should have been born during the Chinese New Year, but the time of your birth was too hot. You should know that when things reach an extreme, they will go in the opposite direction. So, your life was shortened. Before the age of 3, you will have a big disaster. If you can survive it, you will live. After the age of 25, you will enjoy all the glory and wealth and live a happy life. You will have a son and a daughter. You will be successful in your career and have both fame and wealth. The only thing you need to do is to prevent your husband's love. You will suffer a little before the age of 25. Listening to the old lady's words, Eulalie subconsciously wanted to take a seat. Looking at the old lady, she felt a little magical. Shenmanting was not happy and said, "Grandma, why did you tell me a bad fortune, but a good fortune for her?" Old Mrs. Shun looked at Shenmanting and said, "Everyone has their own fate. I have already told you about your fate. Grasp everything now and don't be easily shaken. No matter what trouble you encounter, don't let go. Then your life will be beautiful. Otherwise, the fate of Shenmanting that old Mrs. Shun said made Eulalie subconsciously think of Ming. Is it to let Shenmanting hold on to Ming and not let go? No matter what kind of trouble you encounter, don't let go. Eulalie felt a little magical. Is it fun to be spoiled in advance? Eulalie didn't know, but after hearing such words, she was in a very good mood. Whether it's true or not, I have survived for so long. Isn't it worth celebrating? But who is her husband? Is it Ming? It shouldn't be Ming, right? After having her life spoiled, Eulalie listened to old Mrs. Shun's words more attentively. The old lady seemed to like Eulalie very much. After talking to her for a long time, she became sleepy. After coaxing old Mrs. Shun to lie down, Eulalie finally breathed a sigh of relief. He took out his phone to check the time. After saying goodbye to Shen Longyue, he walked out. Shenmanting quickly caught up and shouted, "Eulalie!" Eulalie turned her head and looked at Shenmanting. Speaking of which, this was the first time she had spoken to Shenmanting face-to-face without knowing each other's identities. Eulalie stood still, faced Shenmanting, and asked, "What?" "Congratulations, your luck is about to change, but I won't let go of Ming. You should give up." Shenmanting was arrogant and domineering. She crossed her arms over her chest and looked superior. Eulalie laughed. "Thank you, but we've already broken up." "Really? Shenmanting asked doubtfully. You'll break up with him? Chapter 965. Yes, we broke up. Eulili shrugged and turned to leave. Wait a minute. Shenmanting caught up and stopped in front of Eulili, saying, I think the name my grandmother gave you is very nice. Shaninwa? Eulili raised her eyebrows in surprise. Shenmanting was a little proud and nodded, saying, Yes, but I think changing a word will be more suitable for you. It's better to call it don't be lascivious. Don't be lascivious and seduce other men. How good is that? Don't cling to Oming anymore. You also heard my grandmother say that you will have another husband. It's good to let him go earlier. Hearing that, Eulili's eyes became cold and said, It's very good. Your modified name is very suitable for you. Keep it for yourself, Miss Lascivious. As she said that, Eulili walked forward, pushed her away, and walked up. Shenmanting's cheeks puffed up and said, You know, my wedding date with Oming has been set. I will send you an invitation. You must come. Eulili's face became more and more gloomy, and she kept walking forward. The hospital was not far from the community where Yi Qianqian's house was located. Eulili walked for about 10 minutes to the gate of the community. It was already past 7 o'clock in the evening, and the surrounding sky was very dark. Just under the street lamp at the gate of the community, a Bentley was parked. Just next to the Bentley, there was a burgundy figure leaning. When he saw Eulili, he straightened up and walked toward her. But Eulili acted as if she didn't see him, walked around him, and walked forward. Suddenly, a big hand took Eulili's hand. It was very cold. All kinds of clothes. Eulili could clearly feel the coldness from his hand. Looking back, his pair of peach blossom eyes, with yellow street lights in his deep eyes, were overflowing with love. Eulili's heart was slightly moved, but soon she looked away, broke his hand, and did not speak. The man behind her was not willing to let go. His voice was low and hoarse, as if coming from thousands of mountains and rivers. He said, Eulili, I miss you. Eulili pursed her lips, reached out to hold his wrist, looked at him, and pulled him away. Then she took 2 steps back, turned around, and walked quickly into the community. From the beginning to the end, he did not say a word. Oming looked at her back. His heart was terribly empty and in turmoil. Such a Eulili was more distressing than ever. However, it was still a little short. When she got home, Yi Qianqian was watching a Korean drama with a bag of chips in her hands. When he saw Eulili coming back, he said, I've already bought some groceries and put them in the fridge. How is old lady Go? Not bad. She even read my fortune. Eulili changed her shoes and went to the bathroom before walking into the kitchen. Would you like some noodles? And while watching the Korean drama, Yi Qianqian suddenly yelled, I'm stuck. The male lead is scolding the female lead. I can't take it anymore. The male lead is becoming more and more of a scumbag. Eulili took a pot and filled it with water. She stared blankly at the water flowing down. Can't men in Korean dramas scold women? Of course not. The female lead should be cherished and cherished. How could you scold her? Scumbag, scumbag, scumbag. What about real life? That depends on how you scold him. Chapter 966. When Yi Qianqian heard that, she got angry and said, Why don't you keep him for the new year? Eulili chuckled and felt the heat from the stove. Her eyes were empty. Yi Qianqian felt something was wrong. She looked at her and asked, Did your boyfriend scold you like that? Don't. Let's talk about it. Don't break up. Otherwise, it will be bad if he blames me in the future. We already broke up. Eulili turned her head and picked up the egg noodles and vegetables. She slowly processed them and said, We can't wait for the new year. There are more important things to do during the new year. Well, Yi Qianqian felt something was wrong. Really? When? Traveling during the new year. Eulili put the noodles in and looked at Yi Qianqian with a smile. Do you have any plans? If you don't, how about traveling together? Sure. Yi Qianqian looked excited. When is the new year? During the new year, between the first and second day of the new year. Well, the smile on Yi Qianqian's face gradually disappeared. No, I have to go home. I haven't been home all year. If I don't go home during the new year, my mother will kill me. I understand. Eulili looked at the steam rising from the pot while cooking the noodles. She looked down and said, I'm just saying, I used to travel alone. When she wasn't with Ming, she worked part-time during the New Year. During the years when she was with Ming, she went everywhere during the New Year. After she broke up with Ming, Lily spent the next few years walking and stopping. As she walked, she painted, and sometimes she felt sad. Originally, she thought that she wouldn't be able to make it through the New Year. Unexpectedly, she was still alive and well. Yi Qianqian felt a little sorry for Lily, but she didn't say it. She quickly changed the topic. They ate the noodles together. After washing the dishes, Lily went back to her room to paint. But she was really not in a good mood. Lily lay on the bed, picked up the headphones, plugged them in, and turned on the monitor plug-in in Shenmanting's phone. Shenmanting seemed to be on her way home. There was the sound of cars driving and honking. At the same time, there was the sound of the car radio. After about half an hour, it finally quieted down. Lily could clearly hear the sound of Shenmanting's high heels, the sound of her entering the password, and the sound of the door opening. However, after Shenmanting closed the door, she exclaimed in surprise. Even Lily felt a little creeped out by the sound. Then, she opened her mouth and shouted, Big brother, why are you here? Big brother? That's Shen Luo, right? She pricked up her ears and heard the man's footsteps. Shenmanting retreated in fear. Then, she heard the sound of something being hit. Big brother, don't, Shenmanting said in a sobbing voice. You said that as long as I get married before this year, you will. Lily was shocked and looked up. Was Shenmanting in danger? However, wasn't the other party big brother? Why was there such a sound? Shoo! Shen Luo's voice was unexpectedly pleasant to the ears. It was like a thick subwoofer. I said that as long as you get married before this year, I won't touch you. Chapter 9:67. In Lily's heart, there was a word that was running amok. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. She seemed to have stumbled upon a huge secret. But then, Shenmanting's bag seemed to be thrown far away. After several collisions, Lily could hear the sound over there, but she couldn't hear it clearly. Shen Luo and took the bag from Shenmanting's hand and threw it into the room. The bag rolled from the sofa to under the coffee table, far away from them. Shenmanting looked at Shen Luo and in front of her in horror and kept shrinking back. Shen Luo and saw Shenmanting like this, and his eyes were a bit gentle, but his actions were overbearing. He approached her step by step and said, But Ming doesn't like you at all. Can't you see it? Shenmanting looked at him with red eyes and said, I will get married this year, and my grandmother also hopes that I will get married before this year. I can't let her down. Brother, you should give up. We are brother and sister, Shen Luo, and smiled, as usual, gentle as jade. However, he stretched out his hands and placed them on both sides of her body. He leaned forward and said in a threatening manner, What kind of brother and sister are we? You know very well that we aren't related by blood. It's just my wishful thinking that allowed me to recognize you. You also know that my brain isn't that good. Shenmanting shrank back in fear and almost cried out. She shouted, Brother, you can't do this. Shen Luo and suddenly approached her and pressed her against him. Shenmanting groaned and turned her head away. Shen Luo and said, When I asked you to choose between Li Xiqing, Ming, and me, you should have chosen me instead of that playboy. Now, do you regret it? Brother, don't do this. Shenmanting was about to cry. Don't be afraid. Shen Luo and was obviously a lot calmer. I mean what I say. Shen Luo An's gentle eyes were stained with sharpness. He squatted down and looked her in the eyes. But you'd better be clean. Don't let me find out about this dirty trick again. Shenmanting looked up in shock. How did you? Don't be too lucky. I know everything. Shen Luo and looked at her deeply. Then, the sound of his footsteps faded away, and the door was closed. She finally heaved a sigh of relief, but the fear and guilt in her heart overflowed. How could this be? How could this be? Shenmanting's body gradually collapsed, and she leaned against the door. After a long time, she got up from the ground and stumbled over to find her cell phone to make a call. Lily hadn't heard anything just now. Now that Shenmanting picked up the phone, she could hear the voice on the other end. What should I do? Big brother, is looking for me again. Yulili did not expect to hear such a big secret. Manting and Shun Luo, and have some kind of ambiguous relationship? But wasn't Yu married to Shun Luo, and had an affair with his own sister? What a mess. Yulili felt that her brain capacity wasn't enough. She stood up abruptly and subconsciously wanted to tell Yi Qianqian about it. Chapter 968. If I'm found out, will I be treated as a pervert? Yulili felt a little distressed and frowned. While she was hesitating, Yi Qianqian's door was suddenly opened. She was caught off guard and saw a person standing at the door. Yi Qianqian's heart skipped a beat, and she jumped back. When he saw that it was Yulili, he was scared out of his wits. You scare me to death. What are you doing here? Yulili was also shocked. Faced with Yi Qianqian's question, she couldn't help feeling guilty. Well, what am I doing here? Yulili didn't know how to explain herself. After thinking for a while, she still couldn't think of what to say. She saw Yi Qianqian's face was strange. She approached cautiously step by step, looked at her suspiciously, and said, "Are you gay? And a gay voyeur?" Yulili narrowed her eyes and said, "Even if I'm gay, I won't like this kind of person." Hearing that, Yi Qianqian's face puffed up. She looked unconvinced and said angrily, "What's wrong with me? How am I bad? I have breasts and a butt. I'm not bad at all." Yulili looked suspicious and shook her head. "I really can't see how you are not bad." Yi Qianqian received a critical hit and almost beat her up, but she quickly snorted and said, "By the way, why are you looking for me?" "Oh, I just want to see if you're asleep. If you're not, let's go for a night run." Yi Qianqian looked desperate and said, "Why do we have to go for a night run? Snacks are not good. Korean dramas are not good. Mobile phones are not fun. Why do we have to go for a night run?" Yulili was speechless and turned around, but she was still curious and asked, "You said that your sister married Shun Luoan. How was her relationship with Shun Luoan?" "How would I know? I am not interested in their life. I'm a single dog, so I don't need to pay so much attention to it. Otherwise, I will be abused to tears." Yulili looked at her sympathetically. Suddenly, she smirked and asked, "Girl, are you still a virgin?" Yi Qianqian was speechless. "No way, really? How old are you?" 26, 27, 28, scram. "Hey, you're angry from embarrassment. Tell me, how old are you?" However, Yulili's response was a loud slam of the door, followed by an earth-shattering cry. "Oh my God, there's no justice in this day and age. It's my fault that I'm single." Yulili smiled and walked back to the room. Yi Qianqian lay on the bed for a long time. She scratched her head and picked up her cell phone to call Yi Yu. The phone rang for a long time before Yi Yu picked it up. It sounded like she was sleeping. "Hello?" Yi Yu turned on the light to clear her head. Yi Qianqian's voice sounded a little strange. She asked, "How is your relationship with Shun Luo?" And when Yi Yu heard the question, she perked up. Sitting up from the bed, Yi Yu asked, "You never care about the things between me and brother Luo, and why do you ask this now?" Chapter 969. Yes, that girl seems to be very interested in the relationship between you and Shun Luo, and Yi Qianqian said. Yi Yu heard the excitement in her words and exposed her disdainfully. "You are curious yourself. Why do you push it to others?" Yi Qianqian smiled and said, "Half and half. Tell me quickly. I don't know if it's good or not. Since we got married, he has never slept with me." Yi Qianqian was shocked and exclaimed, "No way." Yi Yu nodded and felt frustrated. "Besides, he has never hugged me or kissed me. Every time I go back, he just looks at me and asks, 'You're back?' Then he has nothing to say. Oh my God, how can you not have feelings? You have no feelings at all." Yi Qianqian exclaimed. "How can you tolerate it? Otherwise, he always tells me that he is not ready and asks me to wait." Yi Yu's voice was already crying. "Sister, you also think it's abnormal, right?" "Nonsense. It's so abnormal." Yi Qianqian gave her a big, supercilious look and said, "It's lucky that you didn't lose your temper. If it were me, I might have slept with him that night. What does it mean to let you live like a widow?" While speaking, it seemed that she thought of something and said, "Is it because of the old woman of the Shun family?" That old woman told him not to touch you, not to sleep with you. Yu paused and also felt that it was very possible. The more Yi Qianqian thought about it, the more confused she became. She scolded, "Damn it, that old woman. She thinks she is an eminent monk and goes around telling people's fortunes. I think Brother Luo and doesn't like you at all. He just uses the old woman's power to force you to divorce." However, after Yi Qianqian said this, she noticed that something was wrong. Hearing the silence on the other side, Yi Qianqian quickly explained and said, No, I said something wrong. You, don't think too much, sister. Yu interrupted Yi Qianqian's words. I know that Brother Luoan doesn't like me, but he doesn't like anyone else, right? As long as I can be with him, I will be satisfied. When her voice fell, the phone vibrated. She picked it up and saw that it was a call from Li Jinan. When Yi Qianqian heard what Yu said, she sighed and said, You silly girl. Why aren't you sleeping? It's already past 11. Get ready. Sleep early. Good night. Good night. Yu hung up on Yi Qianqian and answered Li Jinnan's call. GM Li, do you still want your wedding ring? Li Jinnan's voice sounded nonchalant. She could even imagine his nonchalant expression. It was as if he didn't care about anything. Of course. Come and get it yourself. Come to my office tomorrow. With that, he hung up the phone. Yu didn't have time to say anything. Naturally, she didn't have time to reject him either. Looking at the phone, Yu thought about what Yi Qianqian had just said. Her emotions were complicated. By the time Yu arrived at the NC headquarters, it was already past 10 a.m. Chapter 970. Yu sat inside and played with her phone. After a few minutes, she heard something outside. Li Jinnan's voice came through the door. At the same time, there was a familiar voice. Yu's body stiffened. She stood inside and looked outside. Li Jinnan was wearing a straight and beautiful long windbreaker. He wore a thin white shirt inside, which showed off his healthy and strong body. And Li Jinnan had a characteristic. He didn't wear a suit like many people. Relatively speaking, he dressed much more casually than many people, but he was very handsome. Perhaps because he had been in the army, Li Jinnan gave people an indescribable sharpness at first glance. But if you looked closely, you would find that the sharpness had been restrained. When you looked again, it was like the clouds and the wind, and his eyes were as clear as the moon. Just behind Li Jinan, a man walked up as well. He was wearing a black coat, a dark gray scarf, dark gray trousers, and pitch black leather shoes. He was slightly shorter than Li Jinan, but he was still very tall. His facial features were clear, and his eyes were like stars. He didn't smile, but he was naturally charming. It's him. It was the man that Yu had loved for 10 years, Shen Luoan. Shen Luoan sat opposite Li Jinan, and the secretary quickly came in with coffee. Yu had mixed feelings. Seeing Shen Luoan there, she inexplicably didn't dare to go out. Why? Even Yu didn't know. She turned back to the sofa, and her heart was in a mess. Hearing the two men talking outside, Yu felt a little strange. One was her husband whom she loved deeply, and the other was her boss whom she had a one-night stand with. And she was hiding in her boss's office, not daring to go out. What is this situation? Yu looked in the mirror in front of her. The delicate makeup on her face made her already beautiful features even more beautiful. But I'm so beautiful. Why doesn't Shen Luo feel anything for me? Mr. Shen, I seem to have heard some rumors recently. It seems that you're married? Li Jinan looked indifferent. He looked at Shen Luo and in front of him and asked casually as he drank his coffee with a smile. When Shen Luo heard this, he smiled faintly and asked, Who told you that? I forgot about that. After all, once the news comes out, everyone will hear it. Towards the end, it will become more and more distorted. Shen Luo's smile widened as he said, No. Li Jinan gently put his hand into his coat pocket. His long fingers gently rubbed the ring lying in the pocket. His eyes fell on Shen Luo's hand. Shen Luo's hands were unadorned. As if sensing Li Jinnan's gaze, Shen Luo extended his hand and waved it as he said, I'm not married. Li Jinan had a look of understanding on his face. He nodded his head and said, So that's how it is. It looks like the rumors out there can't be trusted after all. Of course. Shenluo, and took a sip of coffee and smiled. When Yu heard Shenluo An's reply, she still felt very disappointed, even though it was within her expectations. Yu didn't listen to what they said next. She clutched her arms and shrank into a ball in the lounge. She didn't dare go out. Chapter 971. Did you hear all that? Li Jinan put his hands in his pockets and said, he said he's not married. Yu held her hands together and bit her lower lip. She had mixed feelings. Yes, he's not married. In Shenluo An's heart, maybe marriage is just a process. Why should I care so much? I don't care. As long as I can be with him, it's okay. It doesn't matter whether there is love or not. The word marriage has tied the two of them together. Unless she was willing, they would never be able to separate. The initiative is in my hands, isn't it? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Li Jinan noticed the change in her mood. His eyes were as deep as water. He slowly said, he doesn't have a lover. Those few words easily reminded her of what he had said to her when she had threatened to kill herself to force him to marry her. He had said, Yu, I can marry you, but I won't love you. I can't love you anymore. I can't love anymore. Because of her threat, he could marry her, but he wouldn't love her. At that time, she didn't think it mattered, but she ignored the most terrible human nature, greed. Now that she was married to him, she wanted more. Yu glared at him, stood up abruptly, and ran out. Her eyes couldn't stop burning. Yu bit her lower lip and pressed the elevator button to go downstairs. Li Jinan looked at her back and looked down at the wedding ring on his finger. He felt a little helpless. Didn't she come to get the ring? Now, she hasn't even gotten the ring, and she's already running away? After Yu got out of the elevator, she ran out of the door and could see Shenluo An's back from a distance. It was so familiar, so straight. Yu stopped. Shenluo and didn't notice that Yu was behind him. He was looking down at the news that had just been pushed out on his phone. Everyone is happy. The daughter of the Shun family announces the good news of her marriage with Oming. It will be before the new year. Shenluo and looked at the news, smiled gently, and muttered to himself, can't wait? Or is it just to warn me? Yu watched Shenluo and walk away. Her feet seemed to be nailed, and she couldn't move. Not far away from them, there was a big screen in front of them that was scrolling through the news. And the most eye-catching news was the big news about the marriage between the young master of the O clan and the young master of the Shin clan. So, Shinmanting is getting married? Yu felt a sense of relief. Happiness crept on her face. When Lily saw this message, her hands that were typing suddenly stopped. Looking at the 10-cent news push in the lower right corner, Lily moved the mouse and clicked on the news. There were only pictures of Oming and a selfie of Shinmanting. That's great. They're getting married. On the 23rd of the 12th month, they could celebrate the new year right after they got married. Lily's mood was indescribably gloomy. They had already broken up, so why did she still care so much? Lily closed the web page and was about to continue working when the new receptionist outside shouted, Lily, someone is looking for you. Lily looked up but didn't see who it was. He stood up and walked outside. However, the first thing he saw wasn't a person, but a huge bouquet of pink roses. Seeing the roses, Lily was a little surprised. Chapter 972. Shinjulia's facial features were very good-looking and well-defined. At first glance, he was a bit deep. When Lily saw him, she frowned, then turned around and walked inside. Shinjulia immediately greeted her and shouted, Lily, this is for you. However, Lily's pace quickened as she ran further inside. Shinjulia immediately followed her and shouted, Lily, don't be so cruel. Give me a chance. Her colleagues all looked over with a bit of ambiguity and ridicule in their eyes. When Lily met his gaze, she became even more impatient. She turned around and shouted, Are you done yet? Are you done? Shinjulia took the opportunity to put the roses in her arms and said with a smile, Look, it's over. Yi Qianqian was pouring water. When she heard the movement here, she came in with a glass of water and said with envy, Wow, what a beautiful flower. Lily, is this your boyfriend? He is so handsome. Shinjulia was actually very proud of being praised in such a way. However, in front of Lily, he still had to pretend to be a little reserved. Looking at Yi Qianqian, Shun Julia smiled and said, "You flatter me." Lily put the roses back, looked at Yi Qianqian and said, "This is not my boyfriend." Then, she quickly walked back inside. Shun Julia almost dropped the roses, but he quickly caught them and held them in his arms. He walked in and said, "My good Lily, don't be angry. Let's go to dinner together later." Many people turned to look at him enviously, especially Shanyu. Shanyu wore thick black-rimmed glasses, and her clothes were very ordinary and affordable sportswear. She was a little fat. She looked a little rustic, but she had just graduated from college and was 2 years younger than Lily. At this moment, she looked at Shun Julia and couldn't move her eyes away. Lily noticed Shanyu's gaze and turned to glare at Shun Julia. She said, "This is an office area. Please don't disturb other people's work here, okay?" Many people looked at Shun Julia with sympathy. Shun Julia touched his nose and said, "You mean that you promised me to have dinner with you later? All right, I'll wait for you outside first." Without giving Lily a chance to refuse, Shun Julia put down the roses and turned to leave. Lily looked at the roses with disgust and threw them into the trash can. Shanyu looked at the bouquet of roses and felt that it was a pity. The tender and alluring petals were very fresh and beautiful. Lily didn't notice Shanyu's gaze, but Yi Qianqian did. Yi Qianqian noticed Shanyu's gaze. She pretended to hold the coffee, walked to Lily's seat, and said, "Is this really your boyfriend?" Wow, Lily really hides her strength. She didn't bring such a handsome man out to meet her sisters. That's not good enough. I told you he's not my boyfriend. Lily felt a little helpless. She looked up at her and said, "This guy is the one who caused me to break up with my boyfriend. She's AB*TCH. Chapter 973. Lily glanced at her, picked up the flowers, and handed them to Yi Qianqian. Here, Yi Qianqian held the flowers and smelled them. "They smell so good." She looked at Shanyu and said, "Why don't we share them together?" Shanyu looked at the bunch of flowers, but she quickly looked away. She pouted her lips with disdain and said, "I'm not that cheap. Why should we share what others don't want?" The expression on Yi Qianqian's face suddenly froze. Many people heard Shanyu's words. Suddenly, there seemed to be an unspeakable awkwardness in the air. When Lily heard this, she felt a little inexplicable, but she was angry and looked at Shanyu. However, Shanyu didn't realize what she had done wrong at all. Facing everyone's eyes, she looked puzzled and asked, "Did I say something wrong?" Yi Qianqian smiled and looked at the roses in her hand. She didn't know whether to put them down or take them. Lily took the flowers and said, "Such a big thing. Why don't we each have one? It's very fresh." Lily took the flowers out and gave one to each of her colleagues. There were still a dozen left. Lily found a bottle and put it in front of her. "Look, I still have a most. Qianqian, come here. I'll give you a few more." Yi Qianqian looked at Lily gratefully, took it, and said, "Thank you, Lily." Many people could see that Yi Qianqian thanked Lily not for the flowers, but for helping her out. Shanyu, on the other hand, was much more straightforward. She put the roses on the keyboard. Seeing Lily's behavior, she muttered, "Hypocrite." Lily was angry. She slammed the table and stood up. Everyone was taken aback by Lily's imposing manner, but Yi Qianqian managed to calm them down. Yi Qianqian laughed and said, "Time's up. Let's eat. Lily, I suddenly want to eat the fat cow across the street. Let's go together?" Lily was furious and annoyed. She turned to look at Yi Qianqian, only to see her winking at her. Yi Qianqian kept winking at her. She pulled Lily up and said, "Let's go." As soon as they were out, Lily yelled out, "Is that woman sick? She's retarded. There's something wrong with her brain." Shun Julia heard Lily's voice from afar. He rushed over and asked, "What's going on? What's wrong?" When Lily saw Shun Julia, she felt even angrier. She roared, "Why are you here? Are you so free? Don't you need to go to work? Aren't you a psychologist? Is it fun to dress up like this all day to pick up girls? Are you crazy?" Shun Julia was dumbfounded by the yelling. He looked at Yi Qianqian with a confused expression. Yi Qianqian pulled Lily back, smiled apologetically, and said, "It's okay." She was just angry. It's not a big deal. After venting, Lily was in a much better mood. However, seeing Shun Julia still annoyed her. She pulled Yi Qianqian along and walked out of the office. Shun Julia immediately caught up and gestured to Yi Qianqian. What's going on? She shrugged her shoulders, shook her head, and sighed with an indescribable expression. Chapter 974. Yi Qianqian immediately followed Shun Julia and Yu Lily to the Stone Pot beef shop that they had mentioned earlier. Shan Yu looked at the backs of Yi Qianqian and Yu Lily, feeling very unconvinced. Shan Yu is Yi Qianqian's assistant. Why is Yu Lily, Ziyu's assistant, so close to Yi Qianqian? Now Yi Qianqian is the queen of performance in the company, and a large part of the company's traffic is brought back by Yi Qianqian. But Shan Yu didn't learn anything from her. It must be because Yi Qianqian taught Yu Lily all the time. Even editor-in-chief, Zhou, said that the next candidate for the position of editor was more inclined to Yu Lily. And last time I accidentally saw Yu Lily's computer, it seems that there's a relationship between her and Yi Qianqian, right? There was jealousy in Shan Yu's eyes. When she thought of how Yu Lily almost jumped up and beat her, she felt angry. Why? Why can Yu Lily get in through the back door? I'll get rid of you sooner or later. Shun Julia followed Yu Lily and Yi Qianqian into a restaurant and sat down. His incongruous style made Shun Julia attract a lot of attention. Feeling the eyes of the girls around him, Shun Julia smiled to show his politeness. When Yu Lily saw it, she sneered and said, "If you can laugh so much, why are you a psychiatrist? Go sell your laughter." Shun Julia asked, "Did you eat dynamite today?" Yi Qianqian looked at Shun Julia with her eyes shining and said, "So you are a psychiatrist?" Shun Julia was a little proud to receive the admiration of a girl. He smiled coquettishly. Shun Julia nodded and said, "Yes, now I work while going to school." "Wow, that's amazing." Yi Qianqian looked at him with eyes full of admiration and said, "Do you know hypnosis? I heard that not all psychiatrists can hypnotize people. It seems that the ability of hypnosis is also divided into different levels, right?" Shun Julia nodded and said, "Yes, because everyone's understanding, realm, and spiritual level are different." Yu Lily watched him enter the bragging mode with her own eyes, but she didn't interrupt him. She silently drank her tea, and after ordering the food, she handed it to Yi Qianqian and said, "Order as much as you can. He'll pay the bill." Yi Qianqian looked at the price list and then at the pink suit Shun Julia was wearing. Come on, how much money could there be in this kind of place, even if they tried their best? Moreover, she didn't fit in with this young master who looked like a rich man at first glance. Yi Qianqian circled one and handed the menu back to Shun Julia. After ordering, Shun Julia continued to brag. Yi Qianqian listened attentively and was stunned by his professional knowledge. After they finished eating, Yi Qianqian was reluctant to leave. Her eyes sparkled as she listened to Shun Julia recount all the case studies. She quickly parted ways with Shun Julia. His voice was still echoing in her head. She looked at Yu Lily and said, "Lily, I think I can study psychology too. It's so interesting." Yu Lily laughed out loud and gave her a push. After working the entire afternoon, Yi Qianqian didn't ride her bike to her destination after work. Instead, he walked back home after arguing with Yu Lily. When she got home, it was 6:30 and it was already dark. Chapter 975. The man was meticulously dressed. His burgundy suit had been carefully ironed, and it was very neat and clean. At that moment, he leaned against the Bentley with a cigarette between his long fingers. When he saw them coming, he put out the cigarette by the trash, can not far away, and stood up straight. It was Ming. When Yu Lily saw him, the smile on her face disappeared. When Yi Qianqian saw Ming, she recognized him at a glance. Seeing him, Yi Qianqian felt a little strange. "I can't believe I see such a person at the entrance of my own community. But what is this guy doing here?" Yi Qianqian turned to look at Yu Lily with a face full of gossip. When she was about to speak, she found that Yu Lily was also looking at Ming with a solemn face. Yi Qianqian suddenly had a bad guess and said, "Could it be?" Yu Lily looked at Yi Qianqian and said, You go up first. I have something to do. Yi Qianqian was stunned and couldn't believe it. It was amazing that she knew Li Jinan and a psychiatrist, but Yu Lily actually knew Ming. Oh my God, is there need to live? And from the looks of it, her relationship with Ming isn't ordinary. This Yu Lily has too many secrets on her. When Yi Qianqian heard Yu Lily's words, she looked at Yu Lily and then looked at Ming and said weakly, "Then I'll go up first." Okay. Yi Qianqian led her little donkey into the community. She looked back every few steps, but Yu Lily was not in a hurry to walk in Ming's direction. This is really making Yi Qianqian anxious. Yu Lily looked at Ming in front of her and smiled. She walked forward and said, "Congratulations, you're getting married soon." Ming saw her smile, but he didn't feel happy at all. He couldn't help but reach out his hand. He looked at her and said, "Yu Lily." "Yes." Yu Lily looked at Ming and slightly raised her eyebrows. "What's wrong?" Ming looked at her, pulled her into his arms, and said, "I won't marry her. Give me a little more time, and I will marry you openly and let you be my wife." Yu Lily slightly raised her face and leaned on his shoulder. His heart felt as though it was being twisted, and it was aching, but on the surface he smiled and said, Ming. His voice was calm, with a gentle smile. However, this kind of voice made Ming feel even more uncomfortable than hearing her roar. Ming held her in his arms, unwilling to let go. She gently pushed him away, but to no avail. She placed her hands on his chest and said, "I'm scared. Do you know that?" Ming's heart tightened, and he held her more tightly. Yu Lily simply gave up. Her eyes were burning, and her vision was blurred. Yu Lily could clearly feel his temperature and breath, but she felt that there was a very, very long ravine between them, deep and dark. As long as she moved forward a little bit, she would fall into it and be smashed into pieces, leaving nothing behind. "I'm afraid of your empty promises." Yu Lily's tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. "I don't want to be a mistress anymore, and I don't want to live without dignity by your side. Do you remember that night?" Chapter 976. When Yu Lily heard that, she chuckled and said, "There is nothing to apologize for. Ming, you should be glad that I didn't succeed in committing suicide. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't let you go even if I become a ghost." "It's impossible." Ming looked at her, and his throat tightened. "I can't let you die." Yu Lily shook her head, gently pushed his hands away, and said, "That's it. Let's part on good terms, okay? You have your wife, and I will find a man who loves and dotes on me in the future. I don't have to rely on you, Ming." "No." Ming suddenly panicked. In the face of such a Yu Lily, Ming was at a loss. "No, Yu Lily. Why not?" Yu Lily smiled, and there was some pity in her eyes. She looked at Ming in front of her, as if she was looking at an ignorant child. Soon, she looked away, turned around, and said, "No one can't live without someone else." As she spoke, she had already walked toward the gate of the community. However, Ming reacted quickly and pulled her back, shouting, "I can't." Ming's words made Yu Lily stop. Ming stood behind her, looking at her back. His voice was a little empty, hoarse, and with a little bit of imperceptible fear. He said, "I can't, Yu Lily. Without you, I can't live." When Yu Lily heard that, she laughed out loud. She turned her head and looked at Ming. The compassion in her eyes deepened. She smiled brightly at Ming, as if she was the most brilliant sunflower following the sun, quietly blooming without a sound. "Don't deceive yourself, Ming." Yu Lily looked at him and said word by word, "You are different from me. You can survive without anyone. It's just that without someone different, you will have a different kind of fun." From the beginning, Yu Lily knew very clearly what her identity was and what kind of identity she should use to exist in front of him. She could provide him for fun, for him to vent his desires, for him to play, but not for him to live. Because the only thing that allowed him to live had always been himself. He was just a clown. No one should take him seriously. In his world, Yu Lily was just playing the role of a clown. She could have remained at his side as long as she wished, as a perceptive mistress, as a clown who knew how to please and please him. It was just like how the children in the orphanage scolded her when she was young. If she continued to pretend, she would be able to get candy. But she didn't want to, not anymore. It was not interesting at all. When Ming saw her smile, he silently tightened his grip on her hand and said, "Wait for me, okay? Wait for me for 2 months. In 2 months, I will solve the current problem. When that time comes, marry me." Ming. Lily took his hand away and said, "Go back. Your fiancé needs you more than I do." She shook him off and quickly walked back inside. With her back to Ming, her tears fell quietly. Ming looked at her back and felt a little frustrated. Back in the car, Ming took out his phone. She found Shenluo An's number and dialed it. When Lily came back, her eyes were red. Chapter 977. When Lily saw her, she smiled reluctantly and said, "I know what you want to ask. He is my boyfriend." Yi Qianqian was stunned and couldn't believe it. She blurted out, "Isn't he getting married?" Lily smiled reluctantly and nodded. "Yes, he is, but his partner is Shun Manting, Shenluo An's sister, the daughter of the Shun family." Compared with Shun Manting, her identity and background were worlds apart. Lily looked at Yi Qianqian, and her eyes became redder. She frowned, but she was still smiling. However, this smile was even uglier than when she was crying, and it was even more unbearable. Yi Qianqian looked at her and swallowed all the words that were on the tip of her tongue. She reached out and gently patted her on the back. "What's wrong, Lily? Cry if you are sad. It's better than holding it in your heart." Lily's eyes became redder, and tears quickly gathered in her eyes. But soon she wiped her tears and smiled brightly. "What do you want to eat? I'll cook." Seeing Lily like this, Yi Qianqian pouted and felt a little uncomfortable. She said, "Lily, don't be like this. You make me want to cry." Lily patted her, but she couldn't smile. Her throat was choked, and all the tears fell. Yi Qianqian looked at her like this, suddenly opened her mouth and cried out, "Lily, if you want to cry, just cry. Why are you like this? I can't help it." Seeing her like this, Lily smiled and pushed her to the sofa. "Get out of here. I don't want to see you. You are so useless." Yi Qianqian wiped her tears and said, "Don't cry. What do you want to eat? I'll cook for you. I'll cook for you." "Is the food you cook edible?" Lily wiped her face and looked disgusted. She turned and walked toward the kitchen and said, "Let's eat my best dishes." "Okay." Yi Qianqian was just saying. How could she cook? If she was asked to cook, she would probably blow up the kitchen in minutes. Lily smiled and turned to take out the ingredients she bought during the morning run in the fridge. Her best dishes were all Ming's favorites. For the rest of the time, she was almost like a zombie. Lily worked during the day and painted at night. On weekends, she quarreled with Yi Qianqian and went shopping. The days seemed very ordinary. However, Ming was not so relaxed. In the private drug research institute, there was finally a breakthrough. The scientist in charge immediately reported the good news to Ming, who was pleasantly surprised. Half a month passed, and the weather was getting colder. Lily went to buy a new set of winter clothes. When it was the winter solstice, she made glutinous rice balls with Yi Qianqian. When Yi Qianqian called Yi Yuyu to come along, Yi Yuyu was already in the capital. The winter solstice was a time for family reunion. As a newly married woman, it was only natural for her to return to the Shun family. However, when she arrived at the airport, Shenluo, who was supposed to pick her up, didn't show up. Instead, Shun Juliet came to pick her up. Yi Yuyu was a little disappointed, but it was within her expectations. Chapter 978. A large basin of water splashed out. Shinjulia instinctively took a step back and pulled Yi Yuyu back. Yi Yuyu looked on helplessly as the water brushed past her. She was still in a state of shock. Looking at the door, old Mrs. Shun was holding a basin of water. She was disappointed to see that the water didn't splash on Yi Yuyu. When Shun Julia saw old Mrs. Shun, he shouted angrily, "Grandma, didn't you see that we're back? Why did you splash water?" Children don't understand. You have to pour all the bad luck away. If the bad luck enters the door, it won't be so easy to get rid of it. old Mrs. Shun said seriously, but her eyes were fixed on Yi Yu. Shen Julia was not stupid. He immediately knew who old Mrs. Shun was talking about. He turned his head to look at Yi Yu and said, "Sister-in-law, don't get me wrong. Grandma is talking about you, but these words are too hurtful." Shen Julia was embarrassed to say it, but he saw Yi Yu smile and echo the old lady. "Yes, it's better to go." Her expression and look were as if she didn't know that the old lady was scolding her for bad luck. When old Mrs. Shun saw this, she sneered, turned around, and walked in. She said lazily, "Bad luck is like a bitch. Whether you care about it or not, it still exists. It's really annoying." Shen Julia was even more embarrassed. He looked at Yi Yu and said, "Sister-in-law." Yi Yu still looked the same. She nodded and said with a smile, "I think Grandma is right. Let's go in." When Shen Julia saw Yi Yu's expression, he felt that Grandma was a little too much. However, even Yi Yu didn't lose her temper. Shen Julia couldn't say anything. He helped Yi Yu carry the suitcase and walked inside. After Yi Yu walked in, she took the suitcase from Shen Julia's hand and took it to Shen Luoan's room. When she entered, Shen Luo was sleeping inside. Perhaps he heard the noise and opened his eyes. A pair of sleepy, hazy eyes looked over with an extremely sharp expression. When Yi Yu met his gaze, she froze on the spot. Shen Luo glanced at the suitcase in her hand and looked at her left ring finger. He curled his lips and asked, "Do you like this room very much?" Yi Yu opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, she heard Shen Luo say, "I'll give it to you." While speaking, Shen Luo had already got up, put on his shoes, and stood up. Just as he was about to walk away, Yi Yu grabbed his hand. He stopped in his tracks and turned his head to look at her. Yi Yu's eyes flickered with sadness. "Brother Luo, we are husband and wife." Shen heard this sentence and smiled. He held her hand and gently pushed it and said, "Luo," and I said, "Yu. Julia." Shen looked at her. Shen Luo reached out and patted the back of her hand. He said softly, "You've already obtained the identity of Mrs. Shun. I've already married you. What else do you want?" Although Shen Luo was smiling when he said this, his eyes were cold. The coldness pierced deeply into Yi Yu's heart. Chapter 979. Yi Yu's breathing was disordered. She looked at Shen Luo and her heart was indescribably empty. Something seemed to be fermenting quickly, but when Yi Yu tried to catch it, it disappeared without a trace. Shen Luo had a smile on his face. He let go of her hand, gently pushed her away, and walked out of the room. The door was closed, and there was a slight sound. The spring that had been tightly gripped in her heart suddenly started to spin. Sorrow slowly and recklessly overflowed. What she wanted was not just this. However, there was no going back. Everything could not go back. The phone in her pocket vibrated slightly. Yi Yu listened to the ringtone of the phone and stood in the same place without moving. Li Jinan, who was far away in Kingstown, held the phone that was ringing and felt a little impatient. He called more than a dozen times in a row, but there was no response at all. Really? What the hell? What was even more strange was that Li Jinan actually had the patience to make this phone call. Li Jinan was a little annoyed, took out a cigarette, lit it, and took a long breath. Little uncle," a tender voice came in, with the unique sweetness of a little girl. Li Jianyue ran into Li Jinan's room and shouted, "Little uncle, Mom and Dad asked you to go outside." Li Jinan saw the lively little girl, put the phone in his pocket, stood up, and picked Li Jianyue up and said, "Ursu, have you eaten glutinous rice balls?" "Yes." Li Jianyue was very happy. She hugged Li Jinan's neck and said, "Are we going to hospital to see Great-Grandpa? When can Great-Grandpa come back?" Li Jinan touched the little girl's nose and said, "Soon, when Great-Grandpa's illness is cured, he can go home." "Then when will Great-Grandpa's illness be cured?" Li Jinhua looked at Li Jinan and was a little puzzled. Mom said that Great-Grandpa's illness is a heart disease, but this heart disease is not a heart disease. "What is it? Is it a heart disease?" Li Jinan carried Li Jianyue and walked out. He patiently explained, "No, A heart disease is a disease of the mood, not a disease of the heart. For example, Ursu has a favorite toy today, but she accidentally lost it and can't find it. Will Ursu be unhappy? That's right. Li Jianhua nodded. This is called mental illness. Li Jianhua tilted her head and thought about it. She said, "Then, did great-grandfather lose his toy?" Li Jianan smiled. As he spoke, he had already carried Ursu outside. Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi stood together like a pair of lovers, looking at each other and smiling. They had both a son and a daughter. How blissful! Li Jianan was a little envious. He reached out to touch Li Mosen's head and said, "Where is Daisu?" Li Mosen looked up at Li Jianan and said, "Daisu went to the hospital with Grandpa and Grandma to accompany Great-Grandpa. Now they're waiting for us to go together and accompany Grandpa for the winter solstice." Although Li Mosen was young, his narration was already well organized. His little brain was very smart. Su Qianxi held his hand and said, "Let's go. Great-grandfather is waiting for us." The family got in the nanny van, and the driver, Xiaoyang, drove. Chapter 980. In particular, he had shot Tang Minjing with his own hands. This was the biggest stone in the old man's heart. There was almost no one left in the Tang family. Although this generation of the Tang family was not on good terms with the Li family, Captain Li had always been a man of his word. He had promised the Tang brothers that he would protect the Tang family. But in the end, when they arrived at the hospital, the whole family had changed their faces, and their faces were full of joy for the festival. Compared to before, the old man had aged a lot. His hair, which was originally gray, was almost completely white, and the wrinkles on his face had deepened and lengthened. His aged face looked even more benevolent than before. Captain Li knew his situation. He looked at his grandchildren and great-grandchildren happily, and his face was full of satisfaction. Li Jianhua, Li Jianxian, and Li Mosen were all in the ward, eating glutinous rice balls with small spoons, talking in childish voices, and laughing, full of energy. Li Beixing, Li Xiqing, and Li Jinan were all there, as well as the Li Xiao and Li Sheng families. They all celebrated the festival with Captain Li's son. Although the venue was in the hospital, the winter solstice was still very lively. Captain Li's smile grew wider. He waved at Li Jinan and Li Beixing and shouted, "Jinan, Beixing, come here." Li Jinan sat next to Captain Li. Captain Li reached out and put his hand on Li Jinan's shoulder. He turned his head, looked at Li Beixing, and said, "You are all good children. Even when you are busy, remember to find a wife. I am dying. If I can see you bring a wife back to see me before I die, I will be satisfied even if I die." "Grandpa, don't say that." Li Jinan's heart ached. He took the old and withered hand of Captain Li. "Get better soon. I am waiting for you to arrange a wife for me." Li Beixing nodded in agreement and said, "Me too. Look, the wife you got for my second son is so good. Ah, sister-in-law is simply the best woman I've ever seen. When you get better, remember to introduce me to one as well. I want to be even more blessed than my second son." Li Beixing nodded in agreement. Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi looked ahead and did not speak. Captain Li said with a smile, "I know my own body. You don't have to coax me. Finding a wife is the most important thing." Hearing such a topic, Li Mosen jumped out of the chair and said, "Grandpa, I will also find a wife in the future. When I have children, I will ask Grandpa to name my son and daughter." Everyone heard this and couldn't help laughing. Li Jianxian also ran down and said, "Yes, I heard that my name and Ursu's name were both given by great-grandfather." The children all said that it was very nice. The old man waved at them with a smile and said, "Good, good, good. Then you have to grow up quickly and find a wife. When the time comes, great-grandfather will give your children names, okay?" Li Jianhua held the small bowl and skipped over. In a soft voice, she shouted, "Great-grandpa, I want one too." The few children surrounded him and spoke one after another. The old man happily responded to them one by one, but it made the eyes of the people behind him turn red. Su Qianxi's heart ached. Holding his arm, her eyes became red. Chapter 981. The old man's mental state was not very good, and he soon became sleepy. After lying down, Li Xiao and his wife first sent all the children back, while Li Xiqing and his brothers continued to stay in the hospital to accompany the old man. Li Jinan was accompanying his grandfather in the hospital. Suddenly, his cell phone rang, and he immediately turned to look. But when he saw that it was a call from the company, he was a little disappointed. After solving the company's affairs, Li Jinan dialed the phone number again. This time, Yi Yu still didn't answer the phone. The phone was placed in the room, and it was muted. Yi Yu helped to cook outside, listening to the conversation between old Mrs. Shun and other family members outside. From the small things at home to those fun things, they didn't mention her at all. Yi Yu was a little disappointed. After helping the nanny to prepare the dishes, she took them out and shouted, "Mom, Dad, Grandma, Uncle, Aunt, and Brother Luo, and it's time to eat." After that, she turned around and went back to the kitchen to put the dumplings into the pot one by one. When the family was at the table, Mrs. Shun coughed softly and said, "Is there one person missing?" Shun Julia looked at the crowd and finally moved Shen Luo and said, "Brother, sister-in-law hasn't come yet." Shen Luo and seemed to suddenly understand and shouted, "Yu Yu, let's eat." When Yu Yu heard this shout, she was immediately overjoyed. She turned her head and answered, "Yes, I'm coming." However, she didn't dare to go just like that. After Yu Yu cooked the dumplings, she scooped them up, put them on the table, and sat down next to Shen Luo. After all the dumplings were divided and placed in front of each of them, Yi Yu began to eat with chopsticks. Old Mrs. Shen didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. She picked up the chopsticks and began to eat. Mrs. Shen looked at Yi Yu and said, "Yu Yu, don't work too hard. Remember to take care of your body so that you can have a good baby. If you can, it's better for you to quit your job and be a full-time wife at home. Luo is busy with work, so you can help him." A smile appeared on Yi Yu's face. Just as she was about to speak, she heard Shen Luo say, "What's the rush?" While eating the dumplings, Shen Luo said, "If she wants to have a child, she can do so at any time. She's still so young. Let her work hard. Otherwise, she won't be able to go out to work after giving birth." The smile on Yi Yu's face froze. With a dry laugh, she replied, "Yeah, I think so too." Mrs. Shen looked at Shen Luo and reproachfully and said, "Yu Yu is young, but you're already 28 years old. Look at the children of your age. Which one of them isn't married and has children? You're the eldest brother. You should set an example for Julia." When Shun Julia heard that, he lowered his head and ate his food in silence. He didn't say anything in case he became the target of a mob. Suddenly, he saw a piece of chicken wing. He stretched out his chopsticks and picked it up for Shen Manting, who had been sitting quietly at the side. He said, "Eat more." Shen Manting was stunned. She noticed that Yi Yu was looking at her. She lowered her head guiltily and said, "Thank you, brother." Shen Luo didn't care and continued to eat. Chapter 982. When old Mrs. Shen saw this, she snorted with dissatisfaction and said, "Some people don't eat if they don't want to eat. They eat slowly and are in a daze. How much do they not want to go back to this family?" Yi Yu's expression changed, and she said, "Grandma, did I say it was you?" Old Mrs. Shen laughed and said, "Why do you have to take it personally? You're being too honest." Yi Yu didn't say anything and continued to eat. In this family, she shouldn't talk too much. The more she said, the more mistakes she would make. After dinner, Yi Yu sat aside and waited for the family to finish eating so that she could help clean up the dishes. However, when Yi Yu was ready to do it, her hand was held. Shen Luo stood aside and took her hand. He squinted and said lazily, "We don't lack a nanny in our family. Just do your job well." "Brother Luo, don't call me that. I'm your husband." Shen Luo's voice was not low, and the dining room was close to the living room, so the people in the living room could hear it clearly. Shen Manting and Shen Julia were happy to hear it. One was happy that Shen Luo was likely to fall in love with Yi Yu, and the other was happy that Yi Yu had finally made it. However, old Mrs. Shun was not so happy. She sat on the sofa and said, "What's so good about this woman? She looks so attractive. She's not a member of our family. She's destined to be separated. It's better not to agree to marry her in the first place. She's a fickle woman. It's also the fate of a second marriage. What a sin. At such a distance, old Mrs. Shun's words could easily be heard by Yi Yu. Mrs. Shun felt that something was wrong and said, "Mom, Yu Yu is listening." Old Mrs. Shun said confidently, "So what? I'm not afraid of her. As for you, I didn't agree to marry this woman, but you insisted. You framed Shen Luo, and because he is not your son, right?" Mrs. Shun was even more embarrassed and speechless for a while. She only gave birth to Shen Julia, and Shen Luo's mother had already gone crazy after giving birth to Shen Luo, and when she was pregnant with the second child, she was lost outside, and Shen Manting was called back later. Mrs. Shun was considered a descendant of a prestigious family. It was not very honorable to be a concubine for someone else. Now that old Mrs. Shun had brought it up, she felt a little awkward. Shen Manting and Shen Julia looked at each other and didn't respond. When Yu Yu heard the conversation from afar, she began to take notice of it. In this family, Mama Shun was the person who treated her the best, but because of her, old Madam Shun had said such things. Everyone said that she might not be very smart, but sometimes the words that the old lady said were so accurate and direct. Was such an old lady really not smart? Yi Yu had her suspicions, but she was secretly delighted to be pulled along by him. Shen Luo and pulled her into the room and said, "Stay here. Don't take Grandma's words to heart." Was he concerned about her? Yi Yu felt a sweetness in her heart. She nodded her head and replied, "Okay." The corners of Shen Luo's mouth twitched when he saw her expression. He let go of her hand and walked out. Chapter 983. What? Shen Luo, and turned his head and looked at her. "You change your mind quickly." Being teased, Yu blushed a little and said, "What are you going to do?" "Sleep in the study." Shen Luo's face didn't change, as if he was talking about something normal. Yi Yu's hand holding Shen Luo's sleeve slightly tightened and said, "Aren't we husband and wife?" "Husband and wife should sleep in the same room." Shen Luo smiled and said, "Yes, but I don't want to." Yi Yu felt even more uncomfortable. She lowered her head and said, "Mom also wants us to be together. She is not my mother, nor is she your mother. Why do you listen to her so much?" Shen Luo took her hand away and said, "Do you wag your tail at someone who is nice to you? Is he scolding me?" Yi Yu raised her eyes and looked at Shen Luo. Shen Luo smiled gently and said, "I'm kidding. Don't be too sensitive. Go to bed early." After saying that, Shen Luo went out. Yi Yu was left alone in the room, standing in the same place. The sentence sounded in her mind, "I have married you. What else do you want?" Really, in addition to the identity of Mrs. Shun, I can't get anything else? Yi Yu stood in the same place and looked at the front where Shen Luo left with her eyes down. How sad. Shen Manting accompanied the old lady to watch TV in the living room and then returned to the room. However, as soon as she turned on the light, she saw a dark shadow lying on her bed. Shen Manting was scared. After seeing that it was Shen Luo, she didn't relax at all, and the panic in her heart was even worse. Subconsciously, Shen Manting turned around and turned to open the door to go out. However, before she opened the door, she had been dragged by Shen Luo and thrown onto the bed. Shen Manting wanted to scream, but her mouth was covered. Shen Luo's face was a little gloomy. Looking at her pair of extremely panicked eyes, there was a kind of indescribable pleasure in his heart. He looked at her and asked, "Are you afraid?" Shen Manting looked at him in horror, but she shook her head against her will. Shen Luo smiled and approached and said, "Who do you want to warn, huh?" Looking at his appearance, Shen Manting's heart was even more frightened. Her heart was beating very fast, and she couldn't control it. Looking at him like this, Shen Manting's heart was even more frightened, and her heart was beating very fast. Shen Luo narrowed his eyes and pressed Shen Manting's writhing body under him. He caressed her body gently with his big hands and said in a low voice, "Tell me, how should I punish you?" Shen Manting's mouth was covered, and she was so frightened that her body trembled slightly. She tried hard to shake her head, and there was a pleading look in her eyes. Shen Luo smiled with satisfaction and said, "I'll let you go, but you can't scream. Otherwise, you'll be the unlucky one." Shen Manting nodded, and Shen Luo unloosened his grip. Fresh air rushed in, and she gasped for breath. Just as she was about to speak, Shen Luo pressed her head down and pressed his lips firmly against hers. Shen Manting struggled subconsciously, but Shen Luo pressed her down even harder. He was extremely strong, and he had never felt the slightest bit of pity for her. Holding her in his arms, Shen Manting almost convulsed in pain. Chapter 984. Shen Luo smiled with satisfaction, and even his movements gradually became gentle. Shen Manting passively accepted his kiss, and the taboo estrangement in her heart grew larger and larger. At this moment, Shen Manting felt that she was simply a pervert. She actually kissed her own brother? Shen Luo saw through her thoughts and found that she was no longer fighting. He was very satisfied and said, "That's right. Don't try to refuse me. It won't do you any good." Shen Manting's hands were released. She looked down and found that her hands had been squeezed purple. Shen Manting felt wronged, but she couldn't tell anyone. After all, in this family, she was just an outsider. Shen Luo saw her wronged look, so he pitifully kissed her on the cheek and said, "Don't provoke me next time. Otherwise, it won't be as simple as today, my sister." "Sister." Shen Manting trembled and looked at Shen Luo, and in front of her, as if she was looking at a madman. However, Shen Luo got up, tidied up his clothes, and then walked toward the door. When he went out again, his clothes were neat and tidy. What happened in Shen Manting's room just now, no one found out and no one saw. In this family, there were always some unspeakable secrets in the dark, waiting for people to uncover. Shen Manting was trembling all over. She took out her mobile phone and called the first person in her mind. However, no one answered. The phone kept ringing in Ming's hand. He leaned against the car door and smoked in annoyance. It was already past 9 o'clock in the evening, and Lily still hadn't come back? He impatiently hung up the phone, picked up the phone, and called Lily. Lily was having a party with her colleagues when the phone rang. After taking a look and seeing that it was Ming, she turned her head and continued to shout, "Let's forget the right and wrong, and let's reminisce the past." It's always fun to go through hardships together. Yi Qianqian was shaking dice with other colleagues, waving her hand domineeringly and shouting, come on, 5 2s, who wants to compete? 6 3s, pick. I want to open it." Yi Qianqian roared. After opening all the bottles, she realized that there were only 5 3s. She was overjoyed and shouted, drink, bottoms up." Lily saw that they were playing dice so happily, so she immediately threw away the microphone and joined them. However, the phone was still ringing nonstop. Ming got into the car, his mind full of annoyance. When it was almost midnight, he saw a taxi stop. The two women were hugging each other, reeking of alcohol. When they came back drunk, they were still singing. When Ming saw Lily like that, his face suddenly darkened. His first reaction was to shout, "Why did you only come back now? Where did you go to play?" However, before he could say anything, he swallowed all of his words. When Lily saw Ming, she laughed and said, "Ming, you're here again. Aren't you annoying? I can see you every day. You're like a ghost that won't go away." When Yi Qianqian heard what Lily said, she fixed her gaze on Lily. She snorted and yelled, "Scumbag, you already have a boyfriend, yet you still come to harm my Lily. Bah, shameless." Chapter 985. Otherwise, Yi Qianqian, who had been scared when she saw him before, wouldn't have the courage to scold him. Unexpectedly, hearing this, Lily held Yi Qianqian and shouted at Ming, "I'm not drunk." Yi Qianqian also followed Lily's example and shouted, "I'm not drunk either." The two women put their arms around each other's shoulders and laughed out loud. Then they walked inside, stumbling, and it seemed that they were not in a good state. Ming's lips twitched as if he were looking at two mentally retarded people. Some men passing by also stared at the two of them. Alarm bells rang in Ming's heart, and he followed them in. The security guard saw Ming behind them and felt something was wrong. So he asked, "Who are you?" Ming pointed to Lily and said, "I am her boyfriend." "Liar, you've been there all night. Are you going to do something bad?" The security guard looked at Ming suspiciously. Ming was a little helpless and shouted, "Lily." "What?" Lily shouted drunkenly. "Shut up, you are so annoying." Ming looked at the security guard and said, "You see, she has this reaction when she is drunk. I will send them up and then come down." The security guard looked at him suspiciously, and after confirming that Lily and Yi Qianqian both knew him, he let him in. Yi Qianqian pressed the button for the elevator and walked into the elevator with her arm around Lily's shoulder. The two of them stumbled drunkenly together. Ming was afraid that they would fall, so he wanted to carry Lily away. But what about Yi Qianqian? He had to watch them from behind and not let them fall. Finally, he followed them up. Ming watched them enter the password and secretly remembered it. Then he saw Yi Qianqian take out the key drunkenly. "Ming, why is it so complicated to open the door? Isn't it better to just get a password?" But, fortunately, the two women were drunk and confused, and the man behind them didn't notice. At the same time, Ming was a little angry at the vigilance of the two women. Fortunately, it was him who followed them. If it was another man, what would he do? Seeing the two of them fall on the sofa, Ming finally breathed a sigh of relief. He went forward and pulled Lily up. Lily wriggled a little and shouted impatiently, "What are you doing? Don't touch me." Ming pinched her nose and said in a low voice, "How dare you talk to me like that?" Lily opened her eyes in a daze and seemed to see Ming. She sneered and said, "I still want to hit you, pervert." Ming's face darkened. He picked her up and said, "Which is your room?" Lily didn't want him to hold her. She straightened her legs and stretched her arms out. She shouted, "Don't touch me. Don't touch me. You be asterisk TCH. Don't touch me. Go hug another woman, go, scumbag, bah." Ming's face was gloomy, and he bent her legs. Lily screamed drunkenly, but soon she straightened her legs again. Suddenly, Yi Qianqian jumped up from the sofa and shouted, "Get up, people who don't want to be slaves." Chapter 986. Ming took a deep breath and directly carried Lily on his shoulder. Lily's body was suspended in the air. She struggled with her hands and feet and shouted, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?" Yi Qianqian looked at this side in confusion. After noticing the movement here, Yi Qianqian was a little angry. She put her hands on her hips and shouted, "Who are you? Tell me your name." Ming held Lily in his arms and felt a headache. In the past, Lily would just lie down and sleep after drinking. How could she go crazy when she was drunk? Sure enough, she was influenced by the company she kept. This Yi Qianqian is really hey. Ming tried not to let her see him. He tried to open a door and walked in. Fortunately, he saw Lily's digital screen the next day. He carried Lily and walked inside. However, Lily suddenly became quiet and said drunkenly, "What are you doing? Why are you walking around in front of me?" Lily's head was behind him. Ming turned around and saw Yi Qianqian at a glance. Yi Qianqian held a basin in her hand and said, "Shh, don't be afraid. I will help you kill the bad guys." Ming had an ominous premonition in his heart. Sure enough, before he could say anything, he saw a basin of cold water splashed in his direction. "Ah!" Lily screamed and struggled hard. She screamed, "What are you doing? Why did you pour it on me? I'm a good person." Ming loosened his hand and put Lily down at once. Ming closed his eyes, wiped his face, and opened his eyes to look at Yi Qianqian. But Yi Qianqian snorted and said seriously, "If you don't accompany me to kill the bad guys, then I have to build a new communist society alone." Ming suddenly felt that it was a mistake for him to follow them. A big mistake. These two people are so tough. What kind of danger can they encounter? I am afraid it is others who are in danger. Lily crawled toward Yi Qianqian from the ground and shouted, "Help! I can't swim. I'm going to drown." Yi Qianqian looked at Lily, who was crawling on the ground, and said with contempt, "Silly girl, do you think that is really a swimming pool?" Ming face-palmed, but he finally felt a little relieved. At least he knew it wasn't a swimming pool. Unexpectedly, Yi Qianqian stared at Lily for a long time before saying, "That's shallow water. She won't drown." Lily's eyes were wide open. She was a little confused. "Really?" Yi Qianqian nodded with a serious face and said, "It's true. If you don't believe me, stand up and take a look." Lily stupidly stood up with a look of surprise. It's true. Ming couldn't stand it anymore. Such a brainless conversation was simply irritating to the ears. He walked up to Yi Qianqian and pushed her out. He locked the door from the inside. Yi Qianqian slammed on the door and shouted, "What are you doing? Why are you chasing me away?" Ming felt like he was about to collapse. He shouted toward the outside, "There are explosives inside. It's dangerous. Report the situation here to the organization. The future of the country depends on you, comrade." When Yi Qianqian heard it, she immediately became serious and shouted, "Yes, sir." Ming breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, she drove him away. He turned around and saw Lily, who had been splashed with water by Yi Qianqian. He sighed and turned over her pajamas. When he was about to pull her up, he found that Lily was staring at him with her eyes open. Ming's heart skipped a beat. He thought she was sober, but then Lily said, "Comrade, where's the bomb hidden? Dash." Chapter 987. Ming was speechless. He picked her up and patted her on the butt. "Shut up. The bomb has been solved. The organization asked me to help you put on the bulletproof vest." "No." Lily covered her chest with her hands and looked at Ming in front of her with a dangerous expression. Ming was going crazy. He took a deep breath and asked why. Lily heard this question and was a little stunned. "Why?" Covering her chest, Lily thought for a moment and said in a daze, "Because Ming will be angry." Ming's heart warmed when he heard that. Looking at her silly look, he asked in a low voice, "Who is Ming?" "Ming is AB*TCH. Lily said confidently. Ming's original expectations were all gone. He lifted her up and said, "Behave." "No, no, no." Lily's mouth was dry and she was about to cry. Ming will be angry." Is Ming so terrible when he is angry? Is he scared to cry? Ming felt a little funny and asked, "What will happen when Ming is angry?" "I'll scold you and I'll step on you." "It hurts, it hurts." Lily burst into tears. "It really hurts." Shun Luo and said. Ming suddenly felt that he didn't quite understand what she was saying. He didn't deny cursing, but when did he step on her? But Ming was a little helpless and said, "Be good. Your clothes are wet. I will change them for you." "No, I am Ming." Ming sighed and said helplessly, "So, Ming will not be angry, will not curse you, and will not step on you. Be good, change your wet clothes, and then go to sleep. Okay? Really?" Lily stopped crying and looked at Ming blankly. Looking at his face for a long time, she asked again, "Really?" Ming nodded with certainty and said, "Yes, it's true. It can't be wrong." With that, Ming reached out to lift her clothes and coaxed her in a coaxing tone. "Come on, put on the bulletproof vest." Oh. Then, Lily really didn't move and let Ming change her clothes for her. After changing, Lily's eyes were closed and her breathing was even. She had fallen asleep. Ming felt a little helpless and gently put her on the bed. After covering her with the blanket, he planted a gentle kiss on her lips. Then he stood up and walked out. There was still a comrade outside who had gone to report to the organization. If he got lost, it would be a grave sin. When he walked out, he saw that half of Yi Qianqian's body was hidden under the dining table, and the other half was exposed. She was holding the basin of water that she had just splashed. Her face was up, and her mouth was slightly open. She was snoring softly. She was fast asleep. He could not bear to look at it. Ming covered his eyes, took a blanket from the sofa, and covered her with it. Then, he walked back into Lily's room. Yi Qianqian was awakened by the cold. He opened his eyes and realized that he was lying on the floor like a lunatic. He got up abruptly, but his forehead hit the leg of the dining table. "Dong!" Yi Qianqian covered her forehead and wailed. "Oh my God, do you have to do this?" At the same time, Lily walked out of the room and rubbed her eyes. Yi Qianqian felt a splitting headache. Why was she sleeping on the floor? Sleeping on the floor was one thing, but why was there a basin of water next to her? Chapter 988. Yi Qianqian wanted to cry. She got up with the help of the table leg and said, "How did we come back last night?" Lily was a little confused and said blankly, "Did we come back by taxi? Then why are we different?" Yi Qianqian was cold. Looking at Lily's pajamas, she rubbed her arms and jumped. "I slept on the floor, and you slept on the bed. Why? Why didn't you wake me up? It's so cold on the floor." Lily was also a little confused. She frowned and shook her head. "I don't know. I forgot. I have a headache. I also have a headache." Yi Qianqian also looked painful and said, "Forget it. I'm going to take a bath to warm myself. I'm freezing." Yi Qianqian took her pajamas and took a bath. Lily went to the kitchen to make 2 glasses of honey water. She drank one and put the other on the table. She shouted, "Qianqian, there is honey water outside. Remember to drink it." "Okay." Yi Qianqian responded while taking a bath. Then Lily finished drinking and went back to the room. But inadvertently, she saw a dry water stain on the ground, and there was a footprint on it. The footprint was very big. Lily compared it and was sure that it was a man's foot. But who could it be? Lily subconsciously thought of Ming's face. "Last night, I seem to have seen him. Is it him? After carrying me back, he changed my clothes. Then he just left Yi Qianqian alone?" The more Lily thought about it, the more likely it was. "Damn it, I can't remember." Lily knocked her head and fell on the bed like a corpse. When Yi Qianqian came out of the bath, the honey water was still warm. She walked to Lily's room with a headache. At a glance, she saw Lily lying on the bed, gradually falling asleep, but her hands were covering her face. It seemed that she wanted to block the light. Yi Qianqian felt a little funny when she saw Lily like this. She picked up her mobile phone and took a selfie of herself and the honey water in her hand. Standing in front of Lily's table, she clearly took the picture. After taking the picture, Yi Qianqian posted it on WeChat Moments and edited. The flower of the editorial department covers her face to sleep because she can't see anyone without makeup. As soon as it was posted, many people commented, "Ha ha." There were quite a number of people who liked the post. When Yi Qianqian saw the comments below, she was in a good mood and laughed out loud. Yi Qianqian clicked on the notifications one by one. Suddenly, she saw a cute cartoon pig head. It was Shanyu. Shanyu liked it. When Yi Qianqian saw Shanyu, she subconsciously thought of all the unfriendliness Shanyu had shown her during this period of time. This unfriendliness was fine when it came to Lily, but when it came to Yi Qianqian, Lily almost couldn't help but want to punch her. If Yi Qianqian hadn't stopped her, she had no doubt that Lily would have taught Shanyu a lesson. At the very least, Shanyu was no match for Lily when it came to fighting. Yi Qianqian didn't care about it, but she soon saw Shanyu's comment. "The digital screen at the back looks so familiar." Yi Qianqian didn't know if it was an illusion, but she inexplicably felt that Shanyu's words had a hidden meaning. Chapter 989. When Yi Qianqian returned to her room, she picked up her phone and scrolled through her WeChat moments. She immediately saw Yi Yuyu's selfie. In the selfie, Yi Yuyu's long hair draped over her shoulders, revealing her fair and delicate side profile. She was smiling, and behind her was a retro telephone. It should be something from the Shun family. There were words on it. "Contentment brings happiness." Yi Qianqian's heart ached when she saw those words. Yi Qianqian felt both sympathy and envy for her younger sister, whom she had been separated from at a young age. Yi Qianqian sympathized with Yi Qianqian's unhappiness in her family, but at the same time, she envied Yi Qianqian's wealth in her family. She also envied Yi Qianqian's horizons and social circle. Yi Qianqian followed her mother, and her stepfather was an honest working-class man. Yi Qianqian liked Yi Yuyu's post and sent a smiley face. When Yi Yuyu saw Yi Qianqian's message, she smiled and quickly put her phone away. Shen Luo and was busy with work. After the winter solstice, he continued to be busy. Everyone in the family was busy. Shun Julia and Shun Manting were going to Kingstown together. Coincidentally, Yi Yu had a schedule in Kingstown, so they agreed to go together. However, to everyone's surprise, old Mrs. Shun refused to let Yi Yu leave. She insisted that she stay one more day. Yi Yu had no choice but to stay for another day and let Shun Julia and Shun Manting leave first. After Shun Julia and Shun Manting left, old Mrs. Shun said, "I want to go to Kingstown too." Seeing Yi Yu's surprise, old Mrs. Shun sneered with dissatisfaction and said in a somewhat bitter tone, "What? You're an actress, and you're afraid of bringing an old woman like me with you? Are you afraid of losing face?" When Yi Yu heard that, her heart skipped a beat. She quickly waved her hands and explained, "There's no such thing, Grandma. How would I dare to do that? It's just that it will take a long time to get to Kingstown. If we take a plane, I'm afraid. I took the high-speed train the last time. This time, let's take the high-speed train together." Old Mrs. Shun glanced at Yi Yu, but her expression remained haughty. Seeing the embarrassment on Yi Yu's face, old Mrs. Shun said with a straight face, "You don't want to? Just now, little uncle and little aunt were together. Why didn't you? It's impossible for them to bring me there. If Long Yu finds out, they will definitely be scolded." Yi Yu was speechless. She would be scolded, too. Moreover, because she was an outsider, she would be scolded even more harshly. Old Mrs. Shun seemed to know what she was thinking, but she didn't care. She looked at her arrogantly and said, "You don't want to? Yesterday, you said that you would be filial to him, but now I've forgotten about it. How hypocritical." Yi Yu felt that it was inappropriate and said, "Grandma, do you want to tell Mom and Dad? I think you just can't wait to take me along. If I tell them, will they let me out?" Old Mrs. Shun was furious. She stood up from the sofa and said angrily, "Forget it. I'll go by myself. You just want me to go out and get killed, don't you? I've seen through you a long time ago." Yi Yu couldn't bear to hear that. She pulled the old lady and said, "Grandma, I'll take you there." Old Mrs. Shun had expected this. She snorted and said, "Help me pack my things. We'll leave in the afternoon." Chapter 990. The old lady was the one in charge of the family. No matter what the Shun family wanted to do, as long as they didn't get the approval of the old lady, they couldn't do it. Except Shun Luo's marriage to her. However, there was nothing between her and Shun Luo, and except a marriage certificate and a ring. There was no wedding photos, and no sex between husband and wife. Everything seemed like it was just a make-do. Only she was trying her best to cater to him. If you love him, you have to cater to everything about him, right? The weekend passed quickly. After Yu Lily handed over the 5th episode of Love Transaction on Sunday night, the dramatic reversal of the plot caused a lot of controversy. Also because of Love Transaction, the number of downloads of the Eurasian Comics app increased, and the number of downloads was in the tens of thousands. Yi Qianqian's performance skyrocketed, and she became the queen of performance that many people in the editorial department envied. Monday, it was rare that Yi Qianqian didn't ride the bike. She was a little excited and walked with Yu Lily. Yu Lily chatted with Yi Qianqian all the way to the company. After they said hello, they saw the surrounding colleagues pointing at them and whispering to each other. Yi Qianqian sat in her seat, but as soon as she sat down, she heard her boss, Editor-in-Chief Zhou, shouting, "Yi Qianqian, come to my office." Editor-in-Chief Zhou rarely talked to Yi Qianqian. This old woman was a little cold. Recently, except for some boys in the technical department and Yu Lily, Editor-in-Chief Zhou rarely talked to anyone. It was the first time that she directly called out Yi Qianqian for trouble like today. Everyone's eyes fell on Yi Qianqian, and they whispered. Yi Qianqian had no idea what was going on, and so did Yu Lily. Seeing Yi Qianqian being called into the office, Yu Lily looked around. She found that everyone's eyes were strange, except for Shan Yu. She sat next to Yi Qianqian with a calm face and was picking up a stack of contracts. Shan Yu had been targeting her and Yi Qianqian more than once or twice recently. Seeing Shan Yu's appearance, Yu Lily was sure that this matter must have something to do with her. Yu Lily stood up and didn't directly ask Shan Yu. Instead, she asked a colleague next to her, "What's the matter? Why is everyone acting so weird today?" The colleague looked at Lily with a strange expression and asked, "Are you living with Yi Qianqian?" "Yeah, what's wrong?" The colleague's expression became even weirder. "We suspect that she pocketed the gift that was supposed to be given to the painter. It's worth a lot. Chief editor Zhou may be checking with her now." When Lily heard that, she frowned and blurted out, "How is that possible? If Yi Qianqian would do something like that, how could I not know?" "There is only one truth," Shan Yu suddenly said. She stood up and looked at Lily. "You two are in cahoots. Of course, you have to pretend to be stupid. Otherwise, how could you not know such a big thing was placed there?" Lily was annoyed to see Shan Yu like this. She snorted and asked, "What did Yi Qianqian take away? Is it expensive? How much?" Chapter 991. Shan Yu looked at Lily with a distressed look and said, "I didn't expect you to be such a person. You are in cahoots with each other." When Lily heard that, she laughed and said, "How did you know? See, you admit it?" Shan Yu looked at her with a disappointed look and said, "Last time, I saw the chat window between you and Yi Qianqian. I clearly saw that you were chatting and you were talking about gifts." Lily heard this and subconsciously looked back, but she couldn't remember. After all, it had been a long time. However, hearing such words, Lily shook her head and said, "Your glasses are so old. How can you see those things so clearly?" As she spoke, Lily reached out to Shan Yu's eyes. Shan Yu's face changed. She reflexively reached out and patted Lily's hand, shouting, "Lily, don't go too far." Lily's face also darkened. She sneered, looked at her angrily, and said sarcastically, "I just want to see if your thick glasses are as ugly as you look." The merciless sarcasm made Shan Yu's face suddenly distorted. She gritted her teeth and shouted, "Shut up! What's a saying?" Lily deliberately tilted her head and thought for a moment, then said, "Ah, ugly people make more trouble. It probably means you, right?" Not being good-looking had always been the biggest pain in Shan Yu's heart. Usually, people around her knew that she was sensitive, so they rarely used such an obvious weakness to satirize her. Hearing Lily's words, Shan Yu's eyes were red with anger. She flew into a rage and shouted, "Don't go too far. So what if you are good-looking? You are still a thief. You don't know how to dispose of the stolen goods. You were caught by others, but you still have such an attitude. You are shameless." Lily heard this and smiled proudly. She raised her eyebrows and said, "There are many benefits to being good-looking. For example, people will not say that ugly people make more trouble." Shan Yu was even more angry and shouted, "You thief! How dare you quibble? When did I quibble?" Lily retorted, "Do you know what quibbling means? You don't know what it means, yet you're still using random words. Didn't your language teacher die early? If he knew that you were using words so carelessly, wouldn't he be so angry that he wouldn't rest in peace?" Shan Yu was at a loss for words. She stared at Lily with her red eyes and paused for a moment before saying, "So, you admit it?" "What did he admit?" Lily looked at her hopeless expression and laughed proudly. "You're so stupid. Don't try to frame others. Yes, the digital screen is indeed in our possession." Lily looked at Yi Qianqian with a smile. "See?" Shan Yu was overjoyed. She looked around at her colleagues and said, "Admit it." The surrounding colleagues all looked at each other and said one after another, "It can't be. I can't believe Yi Qianqian would do such a thing. She relied on Li Xiaoyu to get to where she is today. She even swallowed Li Xiaoyu's digital screen. How terrifying. Sigh. Looks like we won't be able to be kind this time." Chapter 992. Did you steal it? Shan Yu looked at Lily incredulously. But in her heart, she was even more proud. Originally, she just wanted Yi Qianqian to pay a little price, but she didn't expect that Lily would be directly exposed. If this matter were to be carried out, then Lily would definitely not be able to get the promotion that she originally had. Moreover, Lily was still a newcomer. Maybe she would be fired directly. Shan Yu was a little excited in her heart, but she still pretended to be calm and looked at Lily in front of her. Lily snorted and said, "The company gave it to me, so of course it is mine." "You?" Shan Yu heard that and laughed. This is for Li Xiaoyu, right? Are you Li Xiaoyu? Yes, I'm Li Xiaoyu, Yulili said calmly. But, let alone Shan Yu, even other colleagues didn't believe it. Shan Yu laughed and said, "Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? If you're really Li Xiaoyu, then you are as arrogant as the people above you." Yulili heard Shan Yu's words, also laughed, and said, "Do you think you know me very well? Idiot! I'm not a fairy that an ugly person like you can see through." Shan Yu's face turned greener and she roared, "Yulili, you are shameless. I'm not like you. How can I not have such a beautiful face? What are you arguing about?" The voice of Editor-in-Chief, Zhou, came out at the same time as Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian walked toward Yulili, but she stared straight at Shan Yu and said, "What hatred do I have for you? Why do you frame me like this?" Editor-in-Chief, Zhou, came over, looked at Shan Yu, and said, "I have asked about the matter. The digital screen has indeed been sent out." Shan Yu was stunned and said, "What's going on? Is it Yulili? Are you Li Xiaoyu?" Editor-in-Chief, Zhou looked at Yulili with surprise in her eyes. "Love transaction was drawn by you?" "Yes." Yulili smiled brightly and nodded. "It turns out that you didn't know. I thought you could see it backstage." Editor-in-Chief, Zhou looked at Yulili for a long time, shook her head, laughed, and said, "I didn't expect you to be so powerful. When Yi Qianqian told me just now, I didn't believe her. I did a background check and even matched her ID number. Sigh, I didn't expect that." Editor-in-Chief, Zhou's words stunned everyone around her. Shan Yu's expression suddenly became interesting. Looking at Yulili and Yi Qianqian, she seemed a little embarrassed and embarrassed. She looked at Yulili and said, "You are Li Xiaoyu? How could that be?" Yi Qianqian had never been cold to anyone, but this time she couldn't help it. She looked at Shan Yu with a sullen face and said, "I'm not like you. You are useless all day long and full of bad ideas. You actually want to frame me? F*CK. I'm not bad to you, right? Why do you have to do this?" Shan Yu's face turned even paler. She looked at Yi Qianqian and shouted, "Qianqian, Editor-in-Chief Zhou, I don't need her to be my assistant anymore." Shan Yu is absent-minded during work every day. There have been several contract problems, and I have to solve them myself. She is not serious and responsible, and she is forgetful. She is so annoying. Dash. Chapter 993. Shan Yu's face finally changed. She shouted, "Qianqian, I didn't do that. Don't frame me. You know in your heart whether I did it or not. I've had enough of it. I'm your boss, but you give me a cold shoulder every day. Editor-in-Chief Zhou, you do as you see fit. Anyway, I don't want her to be my assistant. It's boring. It's as if everything she does is my fault. So, you're blaming me for being ugly and useless?" Every word that Yi Qianqian said was very hurtful. Yulili raised her eyebrows and looked at Yi Qianqian. They saw a tacit understanding in each other's eyes. It was easy to pick up each other's habits after spending a long time with each other. If it had been before, Yi Qianqian would never have said such a thing. Now that she had said it, she didn't feel guilty at all. Shan Yu was speechless. Editor-in-Chief Zhou looked at Shan Yu and said, "Shan Yu, come in with me." Editor-in-Chief Zhou took the lead and walked into the office. Shan Yu stood in the same place. After looking at Yi Qianqian and Yulili, she followed Editor-in-Chief Zhou into the office. As soon as Shan Yu and Editor-in-Chief Zhou left, they all came to Yulili incredulously and asked, "Lily, so you are Li Xiaoyu? Oh my God, the goddess was hiding around us. None of us found out. You were so low-key." Yulili felt their incredible eyes. She smiled unconsciously and said, "It's okay. I'm just afraid that if I say it, I will face your eyes of worship. It will be very stressful." When everyone heard this, they rolled their eyes and quickly dispersed. Yulili looked very frustrated and said, "Don't do this. Don't leave me alone." However, no one paid attention to her. It was no different from usual. Yulili looked disappointed, but in her heart, she breathed a sigh of relief. Yulili continued to work. She was still doing the same work as usual, but today seemed to be destined to be a little different. Shan Yu stayed in Editor-in-Chief Zhou's office for a long time before she came out. Her eyes were red, and she stared at Yu Lily with jealousy. Then, Yu Lily was also called in. Editor-in-Chief Zhou sat in front of the computer, looked at Yu Lily, and said, Shan Yu is still not suitable here. I learned that she is not very popular and forgetful. So, I transferred her to the front desk. Now, there's only one person who can be promoted to the position of editor, and it can only be you. Yu Lily had expected it, but she still couldn't help but be surprised. Her eyes lit up, and she looked at Editor-in-Chief Zhou in front of her and shouted, Really? Well, let's not talk about your identity as Li Xiaoyu first. You're very capable in all aspects. Of course, this position is yours. Good luck. More importantly, Editor-in-Chief Zhou had once faced the crisis of being fired, and it was Yu Lily who helped her stay. Yu Lily should be promoted regardless of whether it was for the public or for personal reasons. Yu Lily cheered and shouted, Thank you, Chief Editor Zhou. Editor-in-Chief Zhou nodded and said, Go to work. Ask Yi Qianqian to take you. All right. Yu Lily walked out and quickly entered a new state of work. Chapter 994. Yu Lily followed Yi Qianqian to learn the precautions for her new position and some routine operations. They spent the whole morning learning. After lunch, Yu Lily and Yi Qianqian were about to go back to the company when they received a phone call. She was in the capital. Yu Lily didn't need to pick up the phone, but she had already guessed who it was. It was none other than the Shun family. Unfortunately, Yu Lily didn't have a good impression of the Shun family at all, because of Shun Manting, Shun Luoan, and also because of Shun Longyue's disdain and shock after hearing her identity. The only person who left a good impression on her was the old lady of the Shun family. Fortunately, it was all good news. Yu Lily couldn't help but feel a lot more relaxed. But the phone kept calling, and Yu Lily set the phone to silent mode. When she returned to the company, Yu Lily picked up the phone and found that there were more than a dozen missed calls and several text messages. She picked up the phone and clicked on the text messages. There were several in a row. I came to Kingstown to find you. Where are you? I am the old lady of the Shun family. You saved me. Thank you very much for that day. Miss, answer the phone. Just as Yu Lily finished reading these text messages, another phone call came in. Yu Lily picked up the phone this time, and there was an old voice coming from the other side. Hello, is that you, miss? It's me. Yu Lily felt a little strange. Listening to the voice on the other side, that tone didn't seem to be talking to an outsider. When old Mrs. Shun heard Yu Lily's answer, she was a little relieved and happy. She said, You finally answered the phone. Where are you? I'll go to play with you, okay? Well, Grandma, why are you in Kingstown again? Didn't you go back to the capital? Did you come all the way here to find your grandson? No, I'm here to look for you. What's so fun about looking for grandchildren? They're not filial at all. You're the best. Old Madam Shun's aged voice sounded. She sighed. If an old woman like me were to be seen by my grandchildren on the streets, they would definitely ignore me. But you saved me. I can tell that you are my fated person. To be honest, there's an evil aura in my life. When I looked at your physiognomy and palmistry, I realized that you and I complement each other. Miss, you can help me resolve that evil aura. Also, I can help you solve some problems that you can't solve. Yu Lily was a little mystified. Such a thing was really amazing. Yu Lily believed some of it, but not all of it. Hearing the old lady's words, Yu Lily suddenly felt that something was wrong. Could this old woman be a swindler? However, since she was Shun Manting's grandmother, it shouldn't be possible. When old Mrs. Shun heard that Yu Lily was silent, she asked, Where are you? I'm working. I'm working in the company. I see. I'm alone at the station now. I don't know how to get there. Can you tell me the address? Well, Yu Lily felt a little embarrassed and said, Why don't you call someone to pick you up? Call Shin Manting or Shin Jilia. Chapter 995. Let Ming pick her up? When Yu Lily heard this, she immediately thought of the relationship between her and Ming. Although Shin Manting and Ming were not married yet, both parents should have met each other. Ming was also her future grandson-in-law. After Yu Lily asked her for the address, she called Ming. Ming was in a meeting, and everyone in the meeting room was a little anxious because the mealtime was delayed. However, without Ming's permission, no one could leave. Therefore, it dragged on like this, and no one was able to suggest that they should leave first. What everyone didn't expect was that Ming, who seemed to be in a bad mood just now, immediately stopped talking after seeing a phone call. Everyone stared at Ming, and no one dared to speak. Ming picked up the phone as if there was no one else around and waited for the other side to speak first. Ming, yes. Lily thought about her words and said, Shin Manting's grandmother is in the station. Now she is waiting for someone to pick her up. You go pick her up. I have to go to work and have no time to go. Shin Manting's grandmother? Ming felt a little surprised. How do you know? Since it was Shin Manting's grandmother, why did she come to you, Lily? She called me. Ming felt even more strange. The old lady of the Shun family had a very strange temper. She treated many people with an aloof look, and her mouth was full of the book of changes. She was a liar. Every time she saw him, she would praise him, unspeakably noble, unspeakably noble. However, apart from this sentence, there was nothing else. Now she came to Kingstown to find you, Lily, instead of Shin Manting or Shun Jilia. Why? Ming asked subconsciously. Such a thing was too strange. Lily felt a little helpless. How would I know? Anyway, she asked you to pick her up. I have already told her. Is your business whether you pick her up or not? After that, Lily hung up the phone directly. Ming listened to the busy tone coming from the phone and looked up. The whole meeting room was staring at him. Ming's face was still calm, and he said calmly, Where were we? Old Mrs. Shin knew that Ming would never come to pick her up. Sitting on a bench at the bus stop, old Mrs. Shun took out her cell phone and called Lily again. Yu watched her from the side. She felt that when the old lady faced others, she was completely different from when she faced her. Old Mrs. Han was aloof and virtuous toward strangers and treated her own family with respect. She had a proud attitude toward many people, but when it came to Yu, her face was full of disgust. She didn't even try to hide her unruly attitude. Could it really be because of the so-called confirmation of fate? Just as she was deep in thought, she felt a gentle pat on her shoulder. Yu was shocked and turned her head to look. His gaze collided with a pair of chilly and aloof eyes that were like the cool breeze and clear moon in a midsummer night. Just a glance was enough to make one forget to leave. When she saw who he was, she turned pale with fright. She immediately turned her head around and pretended not to know him. That's right, Li Jinan said. Chapter 996. Yu almost blurted out the words, which made her feel even more wonderful. Li Jinan heard the old lady's straightforward praise, grinned, and nodded politely. Hello. Yu stood up and said to the old lady, Grandma, let me take you there. It's faster. Old Mrs. Shun was a little unhappy when she heard this. She turned her head and glared at Yu, saying, What? Are you impatient? Well, a few days ago you wanted to be filial to me. Now you're like this. You're so hypocritical. Yu was used to the old lady's tone, but today she said it in front of Li Jinan, which made Yu feel more embarrassed than ever. How could she? Yuyu's face was burning, and she explained, No, Grandma, you misunderstood me. I think you just want to get rid of me quickly, and then do your own things, right? I knew that you were already holding a grudge when I asked you to stay at home for one more day yesterday. Old Mrs. Shun's tone was a little bitter. When she spoke, she stared at Yu with some resentment. No, who is this? Old Mrs. Shun interrupted Yu and pointed to Li Jinan. Hello, my name is Li Jinan. Li Jinan smiled and looked at the old lady. What's your relationship? Old Mrs. Shun's eyes were full of shrewdness. She looked at Li Jinan and then at Yu and snorted. Yu felt a little nervous. Inexplicably, Yu was a little afraid of this old lady. Although she liked to spout nonsense, most of the time, people had no choice but to believe what she said. Moreover, she often said that she could tell something from a person's face. At this moment, Yuyu's heart couldn't help but beat faster. Will she find out that I and Li Jinan? It's over, it's a mess. Yu hurriedly said, Grandma, He is my boss, my boss. So that's how it is. I said that you can't hook such a good guy with such a bad life. As she said that, she looked at Li Jinan with a smile and said, Brotherly, right? Oh, you look really good. Can I see your hand? Li Jinan nodded. Li Jinan was baffled. He had never encountered such a situation before. Seeing old Mrs. Shun's radiant smile, Li Jinan glanced at Yi Yu with a smile and extended his left hand. Old Mrs. Shun's eyes lit up when she saw his hand. Holding it with both hands, he looked at it carefully and said, What a good broken palm. If you were born in ancient times, you would be either an emperor or a prince. You would be rich and powerful all your life. It's a pity that it was broken at the peak of your life. Did you give up on a particularly good future? Li Jinan withdrew his hand, feeling a little creeped out by the old lady's words. He used to be a major in the military, but later retired. He was almost beaten to death by Li Xiao. But how did this old lady know? How mysterious. Li Jinan cleared his throat and asked, Grandma, how did you know? I am a half-immortal. There is nothing that I do not know. Old Mrs. Shun was a little proud. Suddenly, she saw a figure in the distance. Old Mrs. Shun was a little excited and shouted, Miss, I'm here. Yulili saw old Mrs. Shun with Yi Yu and Li Jinan by her side. She was shocked, but she still walked over. Chapter 997. Old Mrs. Shun was a little happy to see Yulili. She took her hand and turned to look at Li Jinan. What do you think of this young man? While talking, she leaned over to Yulili and said, This young man is good. He is much better than Ming. Yulili turned her head and looked at old Mrs. Shun strangely. Does this old lady want to introduce me to a boyfriend? She even compared Ming with Li Jinan. Yulili felt a little embarrassed. Why is this old lady so friendly? As far as I know, the Shun family and the Li family should have no relationship. Old Mrs. Shun made Yulili feel a little embarrassed on the spot. She smiled, looked at Li Jinan, and said, Third Master Li, why are you here? I was passing by and happened to see Miss Yi, so I came to say hello. Do you know this old lady? Of course I know her. Before Yulili could speak, the old lady spoke first and said, This girl is my destined person. She saved my life. Yulili was even more embarrassed. Looking at her arm being held by old Mrs. Shun, she said, Why did you come here by yourself? I'd better call your grandson or granddaughter. I didn't save their numbers. You can call them. Yulili had the habit of cleaning up records. Sometimes when she was bored, she would clear the records. Therefore, she didn't save their numbers at all. Otherwise, Yulili wouldn't have come alone because she was worried about the old lady. You saw the intimate look of old Mrs. Shun holding Yulili's arm and felt a little strange. It turned out that old Mrs. Shun, who had always been mean in front of her, had such a side. It seemed that old Mrs. Shun wanted to stick to this girl. Old Mrs. Shun wouldn't treat anyone like this. At the same time, Yu also felt a little uncomfortable. She said hello to Yulili and said, Hello, we meet again. Yulili naturally recognized that this was Yi Qianqian's sister. She nodded with a smile and said, You and this old lady, I don't know her. I'm just passing by. Old Mrs. Shun pushed her gently, then reached out to pull the luggage and said, Let's go. Where are you going? Yulili looked at the old lady and felt a little distressed. I don't know where your grandson is. But soon, she thought of something and sent a message to Ming. Give me Shun Manting's number. Ming had just finished a meeting and sat alone in the conference room. After looking at it, he called Yulili. Yulili quickly picked up. Ming was inexplicably relieved and asked, Shun Manting is Shun. Grandma is at the station. You can ask her to pick you up. No. Don't let them come over. Old Mrs. Shun snatched the phone from Yulili's hand and hung up. She said pitifully, They abuse the elderly. I have no choice but to come to you. Young lady, I beg you, don't call them over, okay? Yulili's eyes widened. You and Wong. You and you Mrs. Yu, Lily thought. You and Lee. Mrs. Yu Mrs. with you. At Chapter 998. Yi Yu's words were intended to help Yu Lily and the old lady out of the situation. Yu Lily suddenly remembered what their relationship was. It seemed that Shun Luo was the grandson of old Mrs. Shun, and Yi Yu was his wife. After sorting out their relationship, Yu Lily felt that their family was really chaotic. Yu Lily didn't want to get involved in this mess, so she nodded in response to Yi Yu's words. However, old Mrs. Shun's skin was much thicker than Yu Lily had imagined. Old Mrs. Shun stared at her and said, "What do you mean? The fate between me and Lily is not something that an ordinary person like you can see. Don't try to sow discord between us. The little girl likes me very much. How can she feel troubled, right, girl?" There was a very obvious expectation on old Mrs. Shun's face. A pair of slightly turbid eyes seemed to shine as she looked at Yu Lily. Yu Lily immediately felt that she was being relied on. Suddenly, she felt a headache coming on. She was a little embarrassed and helpless. She looked at the old woman who was full of anticipation and said, "Grandma, you'd better go with your granddaughter-in-law. I'm still at work. I thought you were here alone. If I had known that Missy was here, I wouldn't have come. I'm a little busy over there. It's okay. You take me to your company. You do your work. I won't make any trouble." Old Mrs. Shun looked at Yu Lily with an expression that said, "I'm the most honest and obedient." She nodded her head vigorously to show that she was being honest. Yi Yu saw that Yu Lily didn't want to take the old lady with her, so she was also embarrassed. She pulled old Mrs. Shun and said, "Grandma, I'll take you to my place first. After this lady gets off work, I'll take you to see her. Is that okay?" Yu Lily took advantage of the situation and said, "Yes, I'm very busy. If I don't do my work well, I'll be fired." As she said that, she looked distressed and full of helplessness. When old Mrs. Shun saw Yu Lily's expression, she also realized that she seemed to be a little too capricious. After thinking for a while, she said, "Well, you do your work first. Don't leave me behind, okay?" Leave for an old man to say such a thing to her. It was as if Yu Lily had done something heinous. At the same time, he was filled with regret. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have come. Now, this old lady clearly wanted to rely on him. What should I do? Yi Yu looked at Yu Lily and said, "In that case, can you accompany my grandmother to find a hotel? Please." Facing Yi Yu's gaze and the old lady's, Yu Lily couldn't help but nod her head. Li Jinan looked at his watch and said, "My time is almost up. You go find a hotel first. I'll go first." "All right, go ahead." Old Mrs. Shun looked at Li Jinan with a smile. She then looked at Yi Yu and asked, "Do you have his number?" Yi Yu felt a little guilty. Did the old madam notice something? She hesitated for a moment before nodding her head. "Yes, that's good. Young man, go ahead." Li Jinan nodded politely and turned to leave. Old Mrs. Shun turned around, took out her mobile phone, and said, "Give me the phone number of that young man. Yu Lily." Chapter 999. Yi Yu was embarrassed. Under Yu Lily's strange gaze, her face was a little hot. What does the old lady want to do? Is it really because he is handsome, and then can't help it? Does she want to flirt with a man? But Li Jinan is less than 30 years old, and he is almost the same age as Shun Luo. And is this not good? However, the other party is Shun Luo and's most respected grandmother. Yi Yu did not dare to question it, and directly saved the number for her. Then, Yu Lily helped Yi Yu and the old lady find a hotel and helped the old lady move things in. Just before Yu Lily left, old Mrs. Shun looked at Yu Lily with a pair of pitiful eyes and said, "You must come, don't leave me." Yu Lily vaguely answered, did not say that she would come, did not say that she would not come. Back at the company, when Yu Lily met with Yi Qianqian, she couldn't help complaining. Yu Lily told him all the helplessness she had felt, starting from when she had saved the old lady. Yi Qianqian was stunned and said, "What a big weirdo, isn't it?" Yu Lily sighed helplessly. "Anyway, I don't dare to go to her. I feel that I will be blamed. It is not easy to be a good person these days. Be smart. Don't stir up so much trouble. Oh, by the way, the girl who was with Li Laosan last time, is she your sister?" "Yes, what's wrong? I just thought I saw her. She was with the old lady." The old lady is Shen Luo, Anne's grandmother. Yi Yu was with her just now. When we went to find the hotel, she also went with them. Yi Qianqian was even more shocked and said, "Really? It turned out to be this old lady. Damn it, this old lady is really perverted in her decisiveness. This old woman has been targeting our Yu Yu and treating her very badly. Although I haven't seen her in person, I feel that this old woman is extremely arrogant just by listening to what Yu Yu and my mother said. If it's this old woman, you can't hook up with so many women. What if she goes crazy and bites you?" Eulily laughed, but did not answer. She was busy until she got off work. During this period, the old lady called Eulily many times, but Eulily directly ignored her. Yu accompanied the old lady in the hotel and waited for Eulily to get off work. The old lady took out her cell phone and made countless calls, but Eulily did not answer. Old Mrs. Shun was a little depressed. She leaned against the window of the hotel and looked out. She looked very gloomy. Her manager and good friend, Mira, had already called her countless times, but she didn't dare answer any of them. She looked at the time. She had to go to work at 6:30 p.m., but she was worried about leaving the old lady here alone. She glanced at the old lady and wanted to call Shun Manting or Shun Juliet, but she didn't dare to. If the old lady knew about it, she might scold her even more. By that time, Brother Luo and would be even more. Don't you have something to do? Then go do it. I'll be fine here alone. Chapter 1000. Old Mrs. Shun was a little impatient. She waved her hand and said, "Do you think I'm a child? Go." Yi Yu didn't stay any longer. She left the hotel and took a taxi. Yi Yu arrived at the recording site at 6 o'clock. She put on makeup and got ready, just in time for the recording. After about 2 hours, the recording was over. After it was over, Yi Yu found that Shun Luo and had called her several times. She was ecstatic and immediately called him back. Shun Luo picked up the phone, but his voice was a little gloomy. He said, "Yi Yu, what did you take, Grandma?" Hearing this tone, Yi Yu's original joy suddenly seemed to be poured down by a basin of cold water, and it suddenly cooled down a lot. "Grandma said she wanted to come to Kingstown, but she didn't let me tell you. So you took Grandma to Kingstown? Yi Yu, are you crazy? You are an actress. You have to film every day. How can you have time to take care of Grandma? Do you want Grandma to go with you to film?" Actress. Those two words brought a great deal of humiliation to Yi Yu. The Shin family was like this. They called her profession an actress and said it with a contemptuous tone. However, Yi Yu thought that Shin Luo was different. After all, he had never said such words in front of her. But at this moment, Yi Yu felt very uncomfortable and offended. "Brother Luo, I'm an actress, not an actress. What's the difference?" Shin Luo asked with a sneer. "Grandma hates you so much. How could she go to Kingstown with you? How'd you trick her?" No matter what, you have to bring Grandma home right now. Dad and Mom are going crazy. Do you know how serious the consequences will be if you act so insensibly?" Shin Luo sounded very angry. "You're the one who brought Grandma home. Grandma is fine in the hotel. She won't." Yi Yu tried to explain, but Shin Luo didn't give her a chance to speak at all. "Yu, I know Grandma doesn't like you, and you're very upset, but it's not a good way to please the old people. Now, Mom and Dad are very angry about this matter. You'd better bring her back quickly. Yu, I know Grandma doesn't like you, and you're very upset, but it's not the right way to please the old people." Yi Yu's heart felt as if it had been pried open. She felt extremely uncomfortable. All right, on the way back to the hotel, Yi Yu tried to organize the words in her head. She hoped that the old lady wouldn't scold her too harshly. When she reached the hotel, she realized that the old lady had disappeared. Yi Yu's heart skipped a beat, and her expression changed drastically. He turned around and went to the bathroom, the balcony, and after looking around, he did not find the old lady. The suitcase was nowhere to be seen, but the hotel key card was still in the room. Her face immediately turned pale. Thinking of the time when the old lady sneaked into Kingstown and almost got into trouble, her heart felt like it was going to fly out. He called the old lady, but the robotic female voice indicated that the other party's phone was turned off. It's over, it's over, it's over, it's over. If something really happened to old Mrs. Shun, the Shuns would never let her off. How could Shun Luo and let her off? What should he do? Chapter 1001. Since the old lady likes you Lily so much, she must have gone to find you Lily, right? But I don't have you Lily's cell phone number at all. What should I do? In a panic, Yi Yu thought of Yi Qian. Yi Qian seems to live with you Lily, right? When Yi Qian received Yi Yu's call, she was sitting on the sofa watching a Korean drama. Seeing Yi Yu's call, she immediately picked it up and was ready to ask her about the strange things that happened today. But Yi Yu's first sentence was, "Sister, is your roommate there?" "Yes." Yi Qian was a little confused. "Why are you looking for her?" "Let her answer the phone. I have something to talk to her about." "Oh." Yi Qian took the phone and immediately jumped to Yu Lily's room. She knocked on the door and walked in, then gave the phone to her. "Hello, I'm Yi Yu. We met at the train station today," Yi Yu said. Yu Lily knew who she was and asked, "What's wrong? Have you seen my grandmother?" "I just went to work, and when I came back, I found that she was gone, and her phone was turned off." As she spoke, Yu Lily could clearly hear the panic in her voice. "You saved her last time. If something happened to her on the road this time..." Yu Lily was shocked. She also knew that this was not a trivial matter, so she comforted her. "Don't worry too much. Let's split up and go to the places where the old lady might go." "Does she know anyone here?" "Yes. Shen Manting and Shun Jilia." All of a sudden, Yu thought of them and said, "I'll call them. It's my aunt and uncle." "Okay." While talking on the phone, Yu Lily also stood up, put on a coat, and said, "I'll also go out to look for her. If there is any news, let's inform each other." "Thank you." Yu was about to cry. After hanging up the phone, Yu Lily briefly explained the situation to Yi Qian and went out to look for her. Speaking of the places where the old lady might go, the first thing that came to Yu Lily's mind was the busy street where she saved the old lady last time. Yu Lily didn't understand why the old lady liked her so much. But if she guessed correctly, the old lady's disappearance was likely to be looking for her. Yu Lily and Yi Qian immediately headed in that direction. As expected, when Yu Lily reached the road, she saw old Mrs. Shun sitting on her suitcase by the roadside. That place was where the old lady had been lying the last time Yu Lily had found her. Yu Lily felt a little speechless, but she immediately went forward and called out, "Grandma, so you're here." When old Mrs. Shun saw Yu Lily, her eyes immediately lit up and she shouted, "Miss Lily, you're here? Oh, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Why are there so many mosquitoes in such cold weather in Kingstown?" "Because this is the South. It's different from the North." Yu Lily was a little helpless. She helped her pull up the suitcase and said, "I'll take you back to the hotel. Missy is looking for you urgently." Chapter 1002. Yi Qian felt very puzzled when she heard the old lady's words. Yu Lily doesn't seem to know this old woman well, does she? Yi was right. That old woman was sick in the head. Yu Lily was a little embarrassed. She immediately changed the topic and said, "Have you eaten?" Old Mrs. Shun was moved. She shook her head and said, "No, I'm so hungry." Yu Lily was speechless. Yi Qian picked up her mobile phone and called Yi Yu. After telling her the address, she found a restaurant with Yu Lily and sat down. The old lady hadn't eaten yet. As soon as she arrived at the restaurant and ordered, she immediately began to eat. When Yi Yu arrived, there were two people following behind her, Shun Manting and Shun Jilia. When Yi Qian saw Shun Jilia, her eyes lit up and she shouted, "It's you. What are you doing here?" Shun Jilia was also surprised to see her and said, "I'm here to see my grandmother." "Do you know my grandmother?" Yi Qian's eyes widened. "Your grandmother? Isn't she Yi Yu's grandmother?" "Well, Yi Yu is my sister-in-law. Yi Qian should be glad that she didn't drink water. Otherwise, she would have spat it out at this moment. The world is so big, but the circle is so small. Shun Jilia is actually Yi Yu's uncle. In other words, he is Shun Luo, Anne's younger brother. Oh my God, How could there be such a coincidence? Uncle, do you know my sister? Yu came up from behind. After seeing that the old lady was safe and sound, she quietly breathed a sigh of relief. When Shun Julia heard Yu shout, he felt a little strange. Is she your sister? So, we are relatives by marriage, huh? Shun Julia laughed, looked at Lily, and said, Where did you find my grandmother? I didn't know that you were the kind-hearted person who saved my grandmother last time. My grandmother also likes you very much. It seems that we are really destined to be together. It's a waste of this heaven-sent opportunity if we don't get together. Lily took a sip of milk tea, rolled her eyes at him, and said, Take your grandmother away. I'm going back. Shinmanting stepped forward and glanced at the old lady who was still eating. She said, Grandma, do you know that my parents are worried sick about you in the capital? You are too capricious. Old Mrs. Shin ignored her. She looked at Lily, and said, This restaurant doesn't taste good. Next time, take me to one that tastes good. Shinmanting was a little upset and looked at Lily indignantly. Not only did this woman steal her man, but even her grandmother liked her a little more. Why? Grandma, it's time to go back. Let's go to my villa. It's the villa Oming gave me. It's big and comfortable. Let's live together, okay? Shinmanting coaxed. However, old Mrs. Shin didn't buy it all. She said, You can go back. I've already told Lily that I'll sleep with her today. You don't have to worry about me. Lily almost choked on her milk tea. She turned to look at old Mrs. Shun and said, Grandma, you should go back with them. It's not convenient for me. The room is too small. It can't accommodate a great Buddha like you. But she didn't finish her sentence. Old Mrs. Shun looked at Lily, and asked with a hint of resentment, Do you dislike me? Yes, yes. Chapter 1003. No matter how stupid old Mrs. Shun was, she knew that Lily had acquiesced. Just a moment ago, he had a look of anticipation on his face, but now he had collapsed. Such a change in expression was seen by everyone. Lily felt a little guilty, but she still hardened her heart and looked away. Seeing this, Shinmanting snorted and said, How cruel. Sure enough, a person who is willing to sell herself is also hard-hearted. Lily looked up at her with cold eyes. Shinmanting saw her expression and felt a little proud in her heart. She said, I heard that you broke up with Oming, but you have been Oming's mistress for so many years. Even if you don't have any credit, you have worked hard. You should also attend Oming's wedding. As she said this, she opened her bag and took out a stack of beautiful red booklets. There's no name on it. You can write it yourself and take it out directly. Mistress? Yi Qianqian and Yi Yu didn't know this. They looked at each other and saw surprise in each other's eyes. Other guests next to them heard it and also looked over curiously. Lily's face darkened and her eyes turned cold. She sneered and said, Miss Shin really has a big heart. You're preparing for your wedding, and at the same time, you're trying to get another man to play the taboo game. Isn't it cool to be two-timing? Hearing this, Shinmanting's hand trembled violently, and her face changed dramatically. She looked at Lily incredulously. It was impossible. Shin Luo and only showed that side to her when no one was around, and Lily was not familiar with her. Did she get the news from Shin Luo? Shinmanting's breathing became rapid, and her hand holding the invitation suddenly tightened. However, she quickly pretended to be calm and sneered, What do you mean by this? You know very well what I mean. Lily looked at her, stood up, and raised her eyebrows with a smile. I'll go back first. Take care of yourself. Lily quickly walked out. Seeing this, Yi Qianqian quickly followed. Holding the blank invitation, Shinmanting's face quickly changed and became extremely ugly. Julia looked at Shinmanting and asked in a low voice, Is it true? You have another man? Shinmanting's breathing quickened and she shouted, Shut up. She stomped her foot and turned to leave. Yu felt a little strange. Lily's words kept echoing in her mind. Taboo. Yi Qianqian knew that Lily's ex-boyfriend was Ming, but she didn't know that Lily was a sugar baby. Subconsciously, Yi Qianqian thought of the plot in Lily's manga. It seemed that the female protagonist was kept by the male protagonist, but in her heart, there was always a villain who resisted. Could it be that Lily was painting her own story? However, when Yi Qianqian saw Lily's expression, she didn't say anything. She quietly followed Lily back home. However, as soon as she got out of the elevator, she saw a man standing in front of her house. A tall and handsome figure was standing at the door with a cigarette between his long fingers, which was emitting faint white smoke. When Yi Qianqian saw Ming, she felt even more perplexed. She just heard that Manting was two-timing, but what was the difference between Ming and Manting now? Yi Qianqian felt that it was unfair for Lily. When she saw Ming, she didn't say anything. She took out her key and asked in a low voice, "It can't be true, right? You have another man?" Manting breathed quickly and shouted, "Shut up." Manting stomped her foot and turned to leave. Yu felt a little strange. Lily's words kept echoing in her mind. Taboo. Yi Qianqian knew that Lily's ex-boyfriend was Ming, but she didn't know that Lily was a sugar baby. Subconsciously, Yi Qianqian thought of the plot in Lily's manga. It seemed that the female protagonist was kept by the male protagonist, but in her heart, there was always a villain who resisted. Could it be that Lily was painting my own story? However, when she saw Lily's expression, Yi Qianqian didn't say anything. She silently followed Lily back home. When she got out of the elevator, she saw a man standing in front of her house. The tall and handsome figure was standing at the door with a cigarette between his long fingers, which was emitting faint white smoke. When Yi Qianqian saw Ming, she felt even more perplexed. She had just heard that Manting was two-timing, but what was the difference between Ming and Manting now? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.